Good morning, everybody. I'd like to call to order the regular open meeting of the United Laguna Woods Mutual Board of Directors, a California nonprofit mutual benefit corporation. Today is Tuesday, March 12th. It's 9:30, and we are in the boardroom of the Community Center. I'd like to remind everybody to please silence their phones. Nothing is more disrupting than dingies while we're trying to conduct the meeting. And if everybody will stand, I'd like to ask Director Akrakar to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Everybody nice, please. Repeat after me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. I see we have media in the back. Hi, Brooke. And we have our TV6 upstairs. We have almost a full board today. Director Liberatore is not with us. His wife is in the hospital. She's quite ill. So we wish them both well, and we hope all works out for him. And now we get to the agenda. Do I have any additions or corrections to the agenda? Okay.
A question about consent calendar 11D. A question about how this one is conducted, the review of our financials for the month of January 2019. I don't receive the whole thing. Yes, I received the confirmation that it's been done. So I would like to know what's the methodology they use, what kind of things they have discovered, and what kind of issues or corrections they make.
That's not in order for approving the agenda.
Yeah.
The agenda, you have the report. All we're going to do is we will not discuss it. If you would like further details, I encourage you to talk to Gary and or Betty, because what we get at this board meeting to approve on the agenda is the results, and that's what you have.
I think the residents have the right to know how we conduct this review.
I'm not going to argue with you. This is just approving the agenda. That is not a part that would be of the agenda.
So it's not going to be public knowledge about these issues.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you.
I second it.
All right, all those opposed? All right, there are 2 opposed.
No, me.
3 opposed, all right. So we have 7-3, and the agenda is approved. Now we will look at the minutes of the February 12th meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, the minutes are approved without objection. All right, the report of the chair. We're going to try to do this meeting. We always try. We're going to try extra hard today to do this meeting as expeditiously as possible. We don't want another 5-hour meeting. That means that we will pay very close attention to the timing. Each director will have 3 minutes to either speak for or against any of the issues that we have. Members of the audience who are speaking to a motion will have 3 minutes, and we will also have 3 minutes for the member comments at the beginning. There will be no debate back and forth. You have your one time to speak, and that is it. Okay, now we go to item number 7, which is the open forum. We have 3 minutes per speaker. I hope you have signed up with Cheryl. If not, she has the cards up front that you can sign up to speak, and we will call you by name to speak. You have 3 minutes to speak on items that are not on the agenda. If you are here for something that is on the agenda, you can still fill out a card, but you will be called to speak at the time that we do that item. These should be items that pertain to United. We don't need to discuss items that are either third or GRF items. This should be only things that are pertinent to United. And it's members only. All right, Cheryl, our first speaker.
Our first speaker is Chris Collins.
Good morning, Chris.
Good morning. Chris Collins, 3306Q, and I'm here to give you an update on the foundation and its work on behalf of residents who are experiencing temporary financial crisis. So today I'm here to talk a little bit about emergencies and how they happen. We all know that emergencies just happen, and the foundation has made a commitment to be here to help with some really simple emergency care measures. And so we know that help can really promote resident safety and in some instances even be life-saving. So there are three things that the foundation has committed to be supporting of, and that is, the first one is medical alert systems, the second one is the ambulance care ambulance policies, and the third one is earthquake kits. So we all know that accidents can become an increasing problem, but a medical alert system is certainly something that will help because it can allow people to be provided with a measure of security which can maintain their independence. So if a person falls at home, the medical alert system can provide emergency assistance. And it also can assist with 24-hour monitoring and medication. In the second case, this is about the care ambulance service and these policies. And sometimes, we know that a ride in the ambulance can be extremely expensive. And so the care policies certainly will help with deductibles. And so it's certainly something that can help very much in the case of emergencies. The third thing are the earthquake kits. And those are available. They contain things like, emergency food, a flashlight, blanket, water. We want you to know that the foundation is really committed to being able to help people age in place. And we're also very, very committed to being able to help people that have temporary financial assistance, need temporary financial assistance. Of course, anyone that we assist needs to have been screened by social services. And so the number for social services is 949-597-4267. And if a resident qualifies, we are ready and willing to provide medical alert systems, arrange for the care ambulance policy, and to provide earthquake kits. So for more information, please contact the foundation at 949-268-2246. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris. Next.
Okay, our next speaker is Vasu Carmaker. Mr. Carmaker?
Good morning. I wanted to find out about this Handyman service program. I signed this one and paid $200, and I tried to contact somebody to come and see the electrical system in my unit. It happened twice. The person came and he said that, well, this item is not included. What he did only one time, he replaced the outlet with different color. So I told him that, well, mine is white. He said, no, we don't carry white. I say, I do have white. He said, we don't use yours. So twice he came and he didn't do anything. So I'm not sure what is included and what is not. I'm very unhappy with this system. So maybe people may be having some good experience, but it will be nice to see and get the survey whether really this program works for the residents. If it is not work, why you want to have this contract with somebody who comes there and just charges his time, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it is. Same thing happened with the mechanical support or simple support. I wanted to have somebody to come and help me to remove the mattress because it is heavy. I was promised he will come after 1 month. That's not going to happen. For 1 month, one cannot wait. So I will request to look into this matter seriously. Otherwise, cancel this program. $200 is not worth for small things. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll answer these questions after everybody has spoken, Mr. Carmaker.
Okay, our next speaker is Gary Shapiro.
Morning. This is my first time doing this ever.
Good morning. We don't bite.
Oh, I know. and I apologize for airing what might be dirty laundry, but I walked into my laundry room and I found dryers that now cost me 25 cents every 20 minutes. And when I called Property Services, they couldn't give
Excuse me,
an
but I
answer as to
believe that's
why.
Third. Are you a member of United?
Well, you see, that's the problem. I was told to come to this meeting, and if I'm third, then I guess I'm in the wrong
You're
place.
Third. You need to come to next Tuesday's meeting.
Next Tuesday.
We do not have paid dryers.
Okay.
Let's wait until all of them have spoken, and then directors will have a chance to respond.
All right. I'll come back next week.
All right, thank you.
What's the matter number?
2343D.
That's
Third, right?
That's
Right,
what
so-
we've determined.
Yes.
Okay.
He's coming back
All right. Well,
next week.
they told me in Property Services to come today, but
Okay,
I will
no.
come next week because I got plenty of time.
It is next week. Thank
All
you
right,
very much.
Sorry for taking up your time.
It's okay. Okay, our next speaker is Pat Hilfa.
Let's go. Thank you, and I'm glad you don't bite. I'm here in hopes to talk to all of you about the lack of choices we have for lending institutions to co-ops. I've done real estate buy, selling for 50-plus years, and recently applied for a loan here. I'm new within a couple months to Laguna Woods. But it was the most horrible experience I've ever had. It took months for a very small loan, and the interest rate was exorbitant. So I hope all of you will consider that having co-ops, it's a whole different ballgame to me. So the experience was, I would have given up if I hadn't had help, because it was that horrific. And the interest rate is over 6%. No institution charges that for home loans today, especially for small ones. So I'm here to ask all of you to consider other institutions or to help them come in here. And I worked with the Barron's group here, and they were absolutely wonderful. I wouldn't have done it without them. There's no way I could have done it. And I have a lot of experience, believe me. I have property here and there and everywhere. Never have I been through such a horrible experience as NCB. So for other people here in the community, I hope you do consider, because we do need help with this. We do. Did you want to come say something? I would like Carolyn, who's
No, I'm sorry, are you a member?
She's allowing me to speak on her behalf with
No,
No.
only members can speak.
Okay. Well, I'm here to propose choices, too, because it's a good thing for the community.
It really is, and we do need help. We do. And the loan wasn't even, I mean, I've had many big loans, and this was nothing in comparison. So I hope you will consider. Thank you so much for letting me speak.
All right, thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Carolyn Myra.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Myra, and I live at 599E. I'm both a resident and a realtor. And I was just wondering, when I bought here 20 years ago, all I had to do was get a loan, and they waived the financials. So I wouldn't have been able to buy here. I've made every payment on time, homeowners association, and loan. And I'm wondering why you discontinued something that worked. It seems to me you put a lot of barriers up to keep these places from getting sold. And it's showing in our inventory also. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carol.
Okay, our next speaker is Marla Silva.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Marla Silva. I have been a 9-year resident here in a co-op 207C.
Excuse me, what was the number?
207C.
Thank you.
And like Carolyn, I am a real estate broker here and live here as a resident. I love my co-op. My daughter tells me that I can't move to a condo because I call the repairman all the time. It's great features. It's a wonderful place to live, and I'm so happy to be able to say that let's get more co-op new owners in here. Part of the problem that we have seen is a reduction in the sales, about 11% in the resales recently, and since the beginning of this year, we have a 21% decrease in sales in co-ops. One of the biggest things I see in living here, talking with the neighbors, working here, is the fact that we need the guarantor back. That is a fantastic program. It helps so many people. I have examples of applicants that are wonderful applicants, financially responsible, great histories and everything you could ask for, $1 million, $2 million in assets, and don't have a cash flow to meet the $40,000 a year annual as well. That was increased from 30.
Excuse me, Ms. Silva, that is item 13B on our agenda.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, Juanita.
I'm
okay.
sorry.
All
I'd
right.
like you to wait and speak at that time.
Okay, okay. The pool for the buyers here for the opportunity to be a co-op owner has just diminished and diminished in the financial qualifications. And I'd like to just examine those to see if there's any way that we could have an opportunity to be more open to those that are not as wealthy to be able to live here and be good citizens and good neighbors and good friends to the co-op members of the community. I know it's difficult here because the properties are owned by those that are not allowed to sell them for investment or flippers, as they call it. And I'd like to look at the opportunity to re-examine being able to buy a property, have it remodeled, and then sell it. You call it investors or flippers, but the restrictions are such now that you have to live here for a year. I'd like to examine that again because we show so many properties here. My neighbors like to be able to move into another place and have their place remodeled. That causes a problem too with the year that they need to live here as well. So with that, I had many statements here regarding the lenders as well, which was just brought up by Carolyn and the other lady, for the 1% or more that NCB charges that has caused sales, personally for me, not to get people qualified. They don't want to pay the extra interest rate as well. So I thank you for your time. I know this is a very difficult job that you do, and I love that you are able to consider all the opportunities and listen to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Marla.
Okay, our next speaker is Maxine McIntosh.
Good morning, neighbors. I have two quick questions. One, has there already been a report on the solar heating for the laundry rooms You know, that was installed in 2017. At that time, we were told we'd have the first report in about a year regarding the savings being recognized from using the solar heat. And maybe you had a report and I missed it somewhere. I did miss one board meeting. So I was wondering if there has been a report, and if so, how I can get that information without getting lost in the middle of the computer. The second thing, at a GRF meeting, I happened to hear during the landscape report something about Roundup that I passed along to some concerned neighbors in my area, and that is that Roundup kills grass. So when men are seen out there wearing masks spraying the lawn, they are not spraying with Roundup because it would kill that lawn. I hope you can tell me if I heard that correctly. I think a lot of people need to hear that the Roundup is only used like around the trees to keep the grass from growing right up to the trunk in that circle, or a small area that has been killed to be replaced with succulents, something like that. But Roundup never touches our green grass if we want to keep it green. So I'd like to know that. My request today is that you would please consider assigning a committee to develop a survey for United. United has not had a survey, to my knowledge, in about at least 22 years, if not longer. And you know, a survey of the community, especially if you do it like Third did about 8 years ago and send to about half of all the residents, maybe all the ones in the even-numbered manors or the odd-numbered buildings, so that you get a large response back. And it saves the board having to guess and to use so many opinions. You can fall back on some concrete information. I noticed during several, not this board, another board meetings, I would hear, well, I think and I believe, well, that would cost too much. That would probably cost more than it brings in and so forth, with no information offered to show that a real and diligent look had been looked at that. And a survey leads to that kind of ease of governing that you all would experience. You could ask, as Third did, what is your monthly income? How many people live in your manor? Do you have a computer? If so, how often do you use it? And you give them choices so they can just tick the ones that apply. You could ask, do you regularly read the Globe? My personal feeling is that's the best source of information. Do you watch United on Village TV? If so, how often? How often do you use the carport? You can find out all kinds of information that then impacts your solid knowledge of what's happening among the neighbors in our community. So I hope you will consider that. And if you consider a layman being on that committee, I would love to volunteer to design a really responsible survey. It's worth the expense. Thank you.
Thank you, Maxine.
Okay, that concludes our speakers.
All right. All right, if our board's directors have a response, would you please indicate that you wish to speak? All right, Director Blackwell.
Yes, I agree with Chris Collins. She's right. And we found out in the media meeting this month that if your elevator is being worked on in your building and you need help getting in and out of the building, call 911 and they will send out Care Ambulance. It's a free service. So if your elevator is out and you need help getting up and down the stairs or whatever, you call 911 and ask for Care Ambulance, and they will come out and help you up and down the stairs and so on. So it's free, and it's really useful if you have a doctor's appointment or something like that. Thank you.
Director Akrakar.
I want to first praise Chris Collins for doing such a good work and keep on doing it. Second, I want to talk to Carmaker about the handyman service. We will definitely take another close look at it. My understanding was it is open for everybody who lives in United, and even if your items are altered and you need some help like changing a light bulb, these people are supposed to change it, but I may be wrong. I don't have correct information right now. We'll talk about it. Next, I would like to tell Pat Hilfka, the loan issue, we will definitely bring that up and look at options we have. For Marla, we already know we are talking about guarantors. And Maxine, I think you have some very good ideas there, because maybe we will get a survey going and we'll see what we can do and gather information. The community is of us all, and our views are heard when they come to the board. If they don't come to the board, we don't hear them. So this will be a good idea, a good approach. And I didn't know Roundup was not used on the grass.
No.
Yeah, because it kills grass. Then half the time these people we're talking about is their pets walking on the grass, catching Roundup.
No.
How is that possible? Thank you. That's all I have to say.
All right. Director Addington.
All I wanted to say was, he's gone now, but that Gary Shapiro fella, I didn't get his whole Manor number. It was 23 something.
2343.
Anyway, over there, that part of United that I live in, there's a lot of cross-pollinating with the
Third.
with Third, yeah, in terms of the, so he may be
He is.
United, but he's using, well, are you sure? I don't know.
Yes. He's
Oh,
definitely in
okay.
third.
What do you mean definitely? Because 23, is
Yes.
that why?
He is third.
Okay, because I know it's really, he's over there by me, that's all.
Right.
That's all I wanted to say.
Okay. All right, Director Randasa.
First off, I'd like to thank Chris. Do a great job and continue doing that, because there's a lot of people that benefit from the foundation. With regard to the Handyman Program, I'd like to add what Cash said. Mr. Carmaker? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, great. The Handyman Program is doing such a great job that unfortunately we have a backlog. We only have 2 people doing the Handyman Program, and there's so many people that have signed up for it that it's actually doing better than what we expected. So as a result of that, there is a backlog, and as a result of that, you'll have to wait, unfortunately, okay? This is the thing right now, is it's not an instant on, instant off. There's a waiting period in order to get it because it's doing so well. With regard to your switches, this community has indicated that the tan switches or the beige switches are the ones that are considered to be part of the community. The white switches or the white receptacles, okay, are considered an alteration. And that's the reason why Handyman Program only addresses stuff that is actually within the program. And since it's an alteration to have a white, I understand white and beige is not the same thing. I understood that they had some whites in stock, but I don't know what the story is with that. But at this particular point in time, all of the receptacles and all of the switches are the beige.
I asked him, can you replace this? He said, no, we cannot use yours.
Because that would be an alteration.
Yeah,
I know it sounds silly, but it would be an alteration, okay?
We'll look into it.
We'll look into it. So that's the story with that. With regard to the loans and what have you, I know that my friend over here, we are looking into that because we felt a little competition might be worthwhile, okay? But that's not to say anybody that comes in and says that they got this great deal, we're going to basically say, oh, yeah, great, come on in, okay? We have to make sure we do our due diligence and select whomever needs to be selected, and we have to make sure that we dot all the i's and cross all the t's before we do that. And I'll let Gary talk to that some more because I'm talking out of turn because it's not my purview. And then with regard to Maxine, the task force for the survey, that's probably a great idea. Maybe you should basically chair that whole thing if we decide to do it. Because, I look at it this way. Anybody that comes up with an idea, the greatest part of that idea is when you actually roll up your sleeves and actually do it. And I do that with anybody that comes up with an idea to me. Great idea. Why don't you do it? So we'll see if we can do that, and we'll go forward with that. Thank you. Oh, and by the way, another thing with regard to solar, we have an ad hoc solar task force that we put together that's looking into our whole solar project. And we're looking into all the specific details. And with regard to the various different feedback we've received and reports and what have you, all of that's going to go to the task force, and they will be basically reviewing all of that stuff as part of their review process.
Director Morrison.
Okay, first I want to thank Chris Collins for all the work you do in the village. Next, I want to say, as far as sales are concerned right now in the village, they're down, but they're down about the same percentage as in Orange County and the surrounding areas. I don't think it has anything to do with our rules and regulations here. Third, I would like to say I am all for competition. And I've talked to several of the brokers, and one in particular that is here. And Pamela Bashline handles that paperwork. And as long as the paperwork is competitive or signed the same as NCB, I don't think we have a problem with it. And if you do, okay, if you have a problem with it, you don't have a problem with it. Okay. All right. So anyway, if you do have a problem with it, then I'd say approach us and let us know, and then we can delve into it. But there should not be, because I don't think any of the board members are against competition.
Okay. Director Tong.
Thank you very much for your comment. We take your comment very dear to our heart. First, I want to address the issue, Pat, talking about our loan interest rate is horrible, over 6%. We need to consider other institutions. I agree with you that our loan interest is higher, but maybe we need to explain to you why our interest rate is a little bit higher, because the members don't have ownership of the property, they only have a share. So they cannot mortgage the use right. They can only when they mortgage the use right, it's a little bit higher because we have a higher priority if they delinquent on us. So that's the reason that it's higher. Mortgage company doesn't have the first right. If you go to third, they mortgage with deed, not with use right, so it's a little bit lower on that. If for any, and this is particular for the co-op situation, so if you have any bank that are willing to work with co-op that willing to mortgage on the use right and allow us to have the first priority for any delinquent account, then we'll be more than happy to talk to them. Okay, so if you know anybody, please bring them over, and we'll probably take those information, and we would definitely like to take those information and look into that. And if you have any suggestions, come back to the VMS finance department to provide them the information. Okay, that's the reason that we are higher, because they don't have the first right. Okay, second issue would be the reduction of sales. Reduction of sales. You mentioned the 21% or whatever percent. The sales is purely a supply and demand issue. If there's less demand, there will be less sales and the price will drop. That's typical basic economic situation. So when we add more restrictions on buyers, I personally talked to quite a few people that they said the guarantors make them buy third. They cannot buy from United. So that's the situation. Fortunately, the person that spearhead this guarantor is no longer on the board, so we are considering that. And if you look at the third page, 13B of our agenda, we are reinstate guarantors, allowing guarantors. We fully recognize that it may cause us the price drop. And if you look at the price, compare the price, I'm sure you're in real estate business, you will find the United co-op housing price, the same model is always lower than third the same unit price. So we recognize that, and we are making changes and trying to work on that. As far as the solar, Maxine talked about the solar saving reports. We haven't got anything solid yet, and we only got some feedback from the company, so we are looking into that issue, trying to find out what happened, why we don't get the saving back. And United Survey Committee, that's a great idea. I've been doing private surveys all the time, and I would really like to have some official survey mechanism so we can get feedback from the residents. We are willing to listen, okay? And that's one way we can listen. So that's that's what I would like to explain to you guys. And I would also like to use, if you have any question about these issues, please also reflect to the VMS side, okay? So they can take the first crack at it and help us resolve the issue. Thank you very much.
Director Armendariz.
Thank you, Anita. First, I'd like to comment on what Maxine suggested. When I became a director a little over a year and a half ago, one of the first things I recommended was to have a survey done. And I think it's an excellent idea. And at that point, I was really more concerned about expenditures. And I thought, well, we're putting in a gate system. We should have done a survey to see how many people were in favor of that. That's a major expenditure. Same thing with eliminating Roundup. How do we know if the majority of the population here want to eliminate it if it's going to cost an extra $5 a month, we'll say? So in addition to the items that you were mentioning, I wanted a survey to inquire into matters that have a big impact on the resident in a financial way. So I think that's a great idea, and I hope we can move forward with that. The other thing I want to address is the financing here. When I bought my unit here about 2.5 years ago, I financed it through Barron's Capital, and they were excellent. At that point, I got a 4% interest rate on a 15-year mortgage. That was only about an eighth higher than the normal market rate for traditional property, not a co-op. And with a co-op, you have to remember that all that's securing their loan, it's not a mortgage, is the right to the use of that property. So you have to give them your stock certificate to hold until you pay off the loan. The other thing that's important to recognize is that with that type of financing, the mutual here requires that they provide a recognition agreement. And what that means is that in the event that the resident or the borrower is unable to pay his monthly assessment, the lender has to, they guarantee that they will continue those payments. And we had several other lenders along with Barron's, but they refused to execute that agreement. So we stopped using those. Now, according to my realtor, I understand that he's got a couple of new lenders that will provide that. So I want to check with the board and find out who they need to talk to here to see if they can meet our requirements. Because if we can get a little more competition, as good as Barron's Capital is, it's always good to have other lenders available. The last thing I want to comment on is the solar project. We have a committee that's looking into that. I think we're going to be able to report some very interesting and important findings on that. That's all I can say at this present time. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'll finish up with just a couple of comments. Mr. Carmaker, the Handyman Program was a one-year trial. It goes for another couple months until the 1st of June, and we're taking all of your comments and all of the things that we're finding out into account. As was mentioned, it has been overpopulated, but at this time we don't have budget to add another handyman. We'll have to look at that as we go into the next budget. And you only get so many per month, and if they tell you have to wait a month, it's usually that you've used up your visits for that month. We'll find out more about the white electrical covers. Ms. Silva, these need to go to the Finance Committee and perhaps the Governing Docs Committee, who does have the different agreements, et cetera, that we have legally with our attorney that we have to have with any lender. And as was mentioned, a lot of banks won't touch a co-op. And so the NCB has been the only one that we've had that was willing to work with us. And many of us have loans, it's not mortgages, loans through NCB. I also, where the guarantor problem is, I have to just back off a little bit. It is on our agenda, but it is for discussion only. We are not voting on passing that. There will be a 28-day member comment period. There is a lot of opposition to that. And when it comes to the board, I cannot guarantee you that it will pass. That's something that we're still looking at and discussing. And Maxine, we do have the report that was done for us by Betty in December, which covered the year with our savings is there, and that is available, and I'll get you a copy of that. Okay, let's go on to the next item, which is the update or the responses to February open forum speakers, any that we did not cover. Director Margolis, do you have anything on that?
Yes, I do. I just want to recover what we did. Ron and Al Money and Dave Cohn and Dick Rader spoke about Roundup usage in the village, and the status is that we're trying to find a cost-effective replacement, and in the meantime, Roundup is used sparingly on the edges of trees and walkways. Last month, Maxine McIntosh spoke in behalf of the residents who find it difficult when the HOAs are increased. We know you don't want to see the HOAs increased, and you can do your part to help us. After reviewing the financials, I noted that not everyone was using Easy Pay. A way you can save the mutual processing fees and financial personnel time is to use Easy Pay. United offers you the opportunity to make your monthly home assessment payments automatically through Easy Pay program. And this can be accomplished by your written authorization to transfer funds from your checking or savings account on the 6th of the month. The process has no charges to the mutual. Your payments are made without fail. You have no chance of incurring late fees resulting from delay in the mail or vacation or out of the area. There's a form on the internet and directions, or stop in the community center and they will help you. You need a voided check. Finally, I like to say we know it's frustrating that there can be no dialogue at the board meetings, but that is due to time constraints. You're welcome to come to the committee meetings, and if you want to have a dialogue, there's the United Residency Advisory Committee. It's meeting March 14th at 4 p.m. And if you'd preferably email Cash Ankara the topic, he will have the right people there. And his email address is cash334@gmail.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Margolis. And I might add to that the phrase that we heard at the GRF meeting, which many of us thought was great. If it's green, there's no Roundup. A lot of people talk about their dogs walking on the grass and getting Roundup on their paws, et cetera. If it's green, there is no Roundup. Roundup kills everything. So the dirt areas that you see around trees or in the shrubs, that is Roundup. But there is no Roundup on any grass that is green. All right, let's go to the next item, which is our report from VMS, and Director Mary Stone will be giving that today.
Good morning. Our recent stormy weather has demonstrated what a dedicated and caring staff we have. Trees went down and the crews hurried in wind and rain to clear roads and sidewalks as quickly as possible. Drains were blocked and backing up, and maintenance crews were called back to work and stayed on the job until 11:30 at night. So kudos to the guys from the General Services Division for their work during our stormy weather. Next slide, please. General Services was expanded to include landscape services when Bruce Hartley became the division director. After Bruce left, General Services was split into two departments. Landscape Services with Kurt Wyman, Senior Field Services Manager, and Chris Langenauer, Transportation and Maintenance Manager. As things go, these two managers did presentations at our last two VMS meetings. They haven't been here long, but they came with decades of experience and are tackling the challenges of their new positions with gusto. At our February 20th meeting, Kurt provided an overview of landscape services that showed 142 full-time staff are budgeted in these 9 work centers: administration, nursery, composting, GRF grounds maintenance, trees, grounds and maintenance, which is divided into 8 sections, and irrigation, pest control, and small engine repair. Landscape is responsible for maintaining 318 acres of lawn, 232 acres of shrubs, and about 34,000 trees. They compost our green waste and grow plants in the nursery from seedlings. They control pests, including weeds, but not rats or termites. That's outsourced. They respond to rain events and do creek management, and they top off their list of responsibilities with chargeable services for residents. Current challenges that Kurt brought up were herbicides, trees, and service tickets. The first challenge is Roundup. A herbicide testing plan is being initiated to test the effectiveness and value of 7 products against Roundup. A consultant is overseeing the testing. One thing to note is that other products need multiple applications, while Roundup only needs 1. Another challenge is the 34,000 trees of 330 different species that require different treatment. Arbor Pro consultants provided recommendations for the various trees. Currently, 14,932 are in the queue for maintenance trimming. 448 need to be removed. 11,576 need minor trimming, and staff can only handle about 5,000 trees a year. That's a challenge that appears to require some outside help. Tickets versus staffing. As you can see from this table, in the last 5 years, a reduction in staffing has resulted in an increase in tickets. This creates a vicious ticket cycle. When a landscape ticket is generated, staff is pulled from the crew to respond to a ticket. The crew falls behind due to the limited staff. Landscape quality suffers, resident concerns are received, and a landscape ticket is generated. So we go round and round. Some of the priorities landscape is working on are: develop a comprehensive weed abatement program after herbicide testing, reorganize staff assignments and create a ticket response crew, develop a tree trimming plan, including contracting out some of the work, and a contract for slope maintenance. Moving on to our meeting last week, we had Chris Langenauer, who came to us from Santa Ana 3 months ago. He manages transportation and maintenance with a budgeted staff of 93 in 6 work centers. His big challenge is bus service for the 600 to 900 residents who ride the buses. Fixed route ridership is going down because of the Monday through Friday schedule, and plan a ride is going up. It's during the week. Statistics show that only about 300 residents are currently using Plan a Ride. A bus service evaluation study has been approved by GRF. Fur and Peers conducted a similar study for Rossmore Walnut Creek and will evaluate existing service to residents, identify and evaluate efficiencies, and recommend alternate delivery methods. A town hall kickoff meeting will be held March the 20th at Clubhouse 1, 11 a.m., and all residents are welcome to participate. They want to get the feedback. There are 420 aging vehicles and pieces of equipment, keeping fleet maintenance busy, trying to get needed parts, especially when 40% of the inventory are over 15 years old. Other fleet maintenance activities include fuel delivery, compressor maintenance, and DMV services. There are 38 people on staff for custodial services at clubhouses, common areas of buildings, the garden center, the community center, and all open carports. All open carports are cleaned and serviced 3 times per year. Paving, also called streets and sidewalks, maintains the hardscape in common areas. The work center still has a backlog of about 300 to 350 tickets that they're trying to handle along with the current tickets. The backlog was over 800 tickets recently. Waste management oversees the WM waste management contract and billings. They have implemented a new organic waste program as required by law at clubhouses and the community center for handling food scraps. Bulky item pickup collects more than 150 cubic yards per week, and we ask our residents to please call resident services for your bulky item pickups. Don't leave them at the trash bins. Waste management also provides free disposal bins at the service center. Current challenges for transportation and maintenance include stabilize the department after having multiple managers and supervisors over the past year. Develop a transportation plan to meet the resident needs. Identify adequate staffing needs to meet ongoing service demands. Replace aging fleet inventory and get a lead paint abatement contract for welding. Chris Spar will give the resident services update at our next meeting, Wednesday, March the 20th. Come to our meeting before you go to the transportation kickoff meeting, please, at Clubhouse 1. And that's my VMS report. If there are any questions. Yeah,
thank you, Beth. Did you?
Very good report, Mary. So right now, as far as the tree trimming program, if we got an inventory of 34,000 trees throughout the whole community, first, third, and so on, that means that right now, just to catch up with the cycle, it's a 7-year program, then 5,000 a year. So we're about,
yeah.
Yeah, 3 years behind.
They're quite a few years behind. What they're looking at is a possible 5-year tree trimming plan. So that, and getting, as I said, getting some outside contract work.
Director Morrison.
If you look at 4 years ago, the number of employees we had compared to what we have now, we are substantially down, and I think that's something that we need to look at and decide where we want to go with this, because we're going to keep going deeper and deeper in the hole.
Something to consider when we go into budget.
Yep.
All right, Director Ackercar.
I have a quick question. We do have a software for maintaining the trees.
Yes, we have Arbor Pro.
And if that software is telling you to maintain X amount of trees and you're 3 years behind, what good is the software?
The software has identified the trees that need the trimming and the removal.
All right, I'd like to call on Siobhan Foster to answer that.
Thank you, Madam President. The first thing that Kurt has done is used Arbor Access to sort the trees by tree species, and he will be implementing a trimming program based on species. The fastest growing species will be trimmed more frequently than the slower growing species.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Wait a minute, I have a question. I thought,
Oh, I thought I was going to get by this time without a question from Andre.
Did you press your button?
Silly me.
Yeah, I understand that Arbor software can do a lot of things, but will it save our effort? If it doesn't save our effort and keep on our labor, it's not going to make our job more efficient, then there's no need to spend money on this software. And also, I understand that we spend a lot of money on current technologies. What benefit do they have if they cannot reduce our labor force or improve our response? And I look at the tickets per staff. These numbers are, I understand these numbers are getting higher. But one
They're
thing,
getting lower.
staff is getting lower, but tickets getting
the
higher.
tickets are getting high. Well, you're talking about landscape tickets. Well, there's a lot of
Looking
catching
at
up
the
to do.
chart, if you can bring up the chart, you'll
Yeah.
find out.
It's
the
landscape.
Yeah, that was landscape. 'Cause
Tickets per staff is getting higher. Okay, so what's the reason for that tickets getting higher? What kind of alternative can we do in order to reduce the efficiency and effectiveness? Any alternative we can make it happen? Okay, so I think that's the question that residents are asking. That's what question we need to ask, and answer needs to come from BMS side.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
And what we've noticed is as we take staff off of the crews, the landscape crews, to take care of the tickets, the quality of the landscaping goes down, and then we get more tickets because people don't like it that way. So what we have to do is we have to build our staff back up, which we are doing. Hopefully, in the coming budget period, you'll also increase the staff back to where we can.
We've spent a lot of money on the
No discussion,
technology.
Director Torn.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, the next one was Elsie. Director Addington.
Great report, Mary, and fabulous forbearance. But what I wanted to double emphasize for the transportation kickoff meeting, now tell me if I've got this right, Mary Stone, it's March the 20th at Clubhouse 1 at 11 o'clock, is that correct?
That's correct.
And it's most important, don't you think, for all the people to come, because this is their big chance to give input.
Right.
For
And
the forthcoming survey, right?
Right. We'll have the consultants there, and they will have some presentations, show various options and things like that. Yes. That's why I said you're all invited to come to our BMS meeting, but then don't forget that when the meeting is over, go to Clubhouse 1 and do your bit with transportation, please.
Well, you did such a good job. I just wanted to hear it again. Thank you, Mrs. Stone.
All right. Director Armendariz, you've already spoken, and you only get to speak once. All right, can we go on to the next item on the agenda, which is the CEO report? Thank you, Mary.
Madam President, report, I'm going to start off just by re-emphasizing what Director Stone said. That was number one on my list is tomorrow, March 20th at 11 a.m. at Clubhouse 1, the transportation workshop. Also, at 1:30, our team is also going to be at the towers, getting information from the towers with regards to on that same day. So we're moving forward with that. Second thing I wanted to mention was tomorrow, Wednesday, March 13th at 9 a.m., we are going to have the pickleball court grand reopening out at the facility. So we encourage everybody to show up that's interested in pickleball, and nice to have the facility ready to reopen. The third thing I wanted to mention was the RFID gate retrofit. Obviously, all of us know that we've had a little bit of a setback because of the intensive rain, but the project itself is moving along just as scheduled if it hadn't been for the rain delays. So we will be keeping that information updated with regards to emails as to when we finish gate 2 and 8, and then obviously our next step was gates 3 and 7 will be the next phase of the retrofit. So stay tuned for more information with regards to that. Wanted to mention that our staff, in order to help in our news and publications, is going to be doing a photo show-off. So we're going to have a competition for people to submit photos to us. There's going to be several prizes, nice prizes that will be handed out. Submissions on those photos can be made by Friday, April 12th to our public relations staff. And then the winners will be announced on April 19th. The fifth thing I wanted to mention was coming up, movie night, Bohemian Rhapsody, Monday, March 18th. So that's 7:30 p.m. at the Performing Arts Center. Very good movie if you haven't seen it. I thought it was very enjoyable. And obviously Rami Malek won the Best Actor award, so I think you'll enjoy that. Wanted to also mention that up in our office, Betty Jackson is coordinating the becoming a village docent. So if anybody's interested in that, get a hold of our office to submit your application, and then we're going to have interviews and making appointments on a regular basis if we can fill all those positions. And last but not least, I wanted to mention that upcoming a big event that comes up in April, Monday, April 8th through Monday, April 29th, is our annual Village Games. The beginning last week, March 4th, and ends on March 22nd is the registration. The games feature 23 various events scheduled throughout the community, including some of them just mentioned: archery, badminton, basketball, bicycling, billiards, bocce ball, bridge, equestrian golf, 18-hole and 9-hole, and the par 3, horseshoes, lawn bowling, paddle tennis, pickleball, poker, shuffleboard, softball, swimming, table tennis, target shooting, tennis, and volleyball. So obviously a very, very big event, and we look forward to having all those participants involved. And that's my report for today.
Thank you. I need to go to the roller skating. Did you, okay, let's see, what have we got here?
I have a question.
All right, did you press your button?
I have.
To request to speak?
Yeah,
All right, I'll call on you, Director Bastani.
I have a question. Gate 2 has been closed for a while. And this job of putting an arm and some cameras is not a big construction job. And it's still not open. Can you update us what's going on?
Actually, the gate work is pretty much on schedule. The biggest element that we ran into was the delays, because some of it included concrete work that we had involved, and obviously can't do concrete work when it's raining. And just the rain delays have put us behind schedule. But we anticipate that, talking to Ernesto and Tim and everybody that's been involved with that, now that it's drying up this week, we're going to catch up and get this thing done as soon as possible. So I don't have a precise date as to when it's going to be completed, but very soon.
March 11 was the finish date, right?
The time frame was 6 weeks to get it done, and that we've exceeded that 6 weeks, but it's just basically because of rain delay, not because of any delays in the project itself.
Okay, thank you.
Director Torg.
Welcome aboard, Jeff. We're really glad we have you on board and helping us out with solving issues here and make our residents' life better. You've been here over a month now?
A month.
I hope you have a chance to look around and understand our this community and what needs to make our residents' life better here. Understand there are a lot of issues, residents complain here and there. So what I want to know at this point, as General Manager, CEO and President, I want to know what's your plan of attack for the next 3 years. What area do you see that needs to be improved?
Point of order.
If I may please the President, if that's a request that the board would like, maybe in my next CEO report at the next, I can give you a brief update on.
What we're looking
kind of
now
a
is
game plan.
questions on the report that he gave today.
So we are not going to get your, when
Not
will we
today.
get, when
No.
will we get
We'll talk
your
about it.
plan?
All right, Dr.
I'll defer to the
Director Randasa.
we're not going to hear anything today?
No.
I'd like to comment on the issue that Director Bastani had with regard to the fact that we're only installing cameras and why is it taking that long. It's my understanding right now we're doing infrastructure work. We're doing all the civil work in that area in order to basically get it ready to install cameras and gates and what have you, okay? And that infrastructure work requires excavators and what have you to dig things up and then pour concrete and what have you. So it's not that easy, and as a result of that, we've had a lot of rain, and it's very hard to pour concrete when you're in the rain and do excavation work. So as a result of that, I just want to make sure that everybody understands it's not just a matter of installing cameras and we're dragging our feet. It is infrastructure work, and this infrastructure work is phase one of the actual adding of the gates, and that's the most important part of the adding of the gates because it requires all that excavation and pouring concrete and what have you. So,
all right, I think we've done that subject as much as we can. I'm sure they'll bring us back updates at a regular basis because we have 4 gates coming after 2 and 8 are finished. All right, let's go on to the consent calendar, please. We have a number of different items under the Landscape Committee. We have 2 approvals and 1 denial of tree removals. Under the Finance Committee, we have the resolution to record a lien against 1 member who is remiss in their assessments. The City of Laguna Hills is doing their usual half-day marathon on Memorial Day, and that goes through United. And so every year we have to approve them using our streets for that particular marathon early in the morning on Memorial Day. And then D, consistent with statutory obligations, the subcommittee that we have of the treasurer and Director Addington have reviewed, and we have a checklist that they do. I'm not sure if this went out to everybody. I know it came out to all of the board members. They have done that for January and February. Then we have the corporate record updated on the 2019 reserve component schedule used for the preparation of Civil Code 5570 assessment and reserve funding disclosure summary that was mailed to all of our members in November. We are looking to ratify additional funding for the full reserve study. We had special meetings on this, and the quotes, the bids came in a little higher than the money that we had already appropriated. And so, as you see in your agenda, we need to appropriate another $10,000, $15 to take care of that. And then we have a resolution for the United and GRF committee appointments, of which every month it seems like we have a few changes. And we did also set up the subcommittee, the task force in finance, to review the obligations under Civil Code 5500. I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Make a motion.
Okay, I have a motion by Director Armendariz.
Brenda, so I'll second it.
Okay. Any discussion?
Yeah, I have pressed it.
Okay. Speakers here. Okay, Director Armendariz.
Thank you, Juanita. I'm taking exception to item
D.
Item 11E, which is the ratification that the review has been done. No, I take it back. D, that should be 11D. The ratification that the committee has reviewed the financial records now required under 5500 and 5501. And the reason why I take exception to that is because at the last board meeting,
Point of order. Are you asking to have this moved to an action item?
No, I'm describing why I don't believe it belongs here, and
Do
I
you
don't
want-
think whether you move it or not will have any impact.
Well, if
It's
there's any
not-
discussion, we
this
have to
is-
take it off the consent calendar.
Right.
Okay.
So are you moving to
This
take
is
it off?
not in compliance, okay? So what do I need to do to make sure everybody realizes?
Do you wish
Move it?
to move it?
Okay. I move that it
from
be
the consent
removed from
calendar.
the consent calendar and moved to
How about 12D?
unfinished business.
12D.
12D.
D,
D.
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 D is
D
in
is in
David.
dog.
D is in David.
All right.
I move that, that it be removed from the consent calendar and moved to unfinished business.
All right,
12D.
thank you. All right, we will move 11D down to 12D for discussion. All right, may I have, we have a motion on the rest of it. Any other discussion? Let's see, here we go. Director Bostani?
That was long ago.
Oh, okay, thank you. Director Margolis?
I was going to do the same thing as Manuel did.
Okay. Director Torn?
Yeah, I was thinking about the same thing. This D is not complete, and we need more information to approve this, the whole process.
All right, it is now moved until unfinished
Yes,
business.
thank you.
So may I have a vote, please, to approve the rest of the consent calendar?
D is in donut.
Mine is not.
Use this, use this, use that. Use mine. Try mine.
I'm for it, but it does this one.
All right,
mine, try mine.
Cheryl, would you record that manually, please? All right, the vote is 9 in favor, 1 abstention, so the consent calendar passes. All right, we'll go on to item number 12, which is unfinished business. These are things that were brought up at our February meeting and have satisfied the 20-day notification to comply with Civil Code 4360. And we have 3 of those from the February meeting and then the one that we just moved down from the consent calendar. So item A is I will entertain a motion to adopt a resolution for alteration standard plan policy.
Thank you. I will read this. It is now note 10, whatever, 45, 10, something like that we are here. Thank you. Standard plan review policy. The village has 248 previously approved standard plans available for members for alterations with an over-the-counter mutual consent without having to use the variance process. The Architectural Control and Standards Committee reviews variance requests from members proposing to make alterations using a previously approved standard plan with minor variations. Current policy requires all variations from standard plan to be reviewed by the committee. The committee desires to simplify the approval process for alterations and to minimize time for review of these alterations. And whereas the committee directed staff to create a policy pertaining to minor revisions to standard plans for members who are proposing to perform alterations in their units using a previously approved standard plan. Now therefore be it resolved March 12, 2019, the Board of Directors adopts a standard plan review policy. Architectural drawings shall be provided for all revisions to standard plans to the Alteration Office to review and determine if they meet the intent of the policy, not limited to closets, windows, door style, or placement. Resolved further, staff shall review the submitted drawings. Staff determines the proposed alteration does not affect load-bearing walls or alter the purpose of the room as depicted in the standard plan, meets the intent of the policy and conforms to all pertinent alteration policies. Staff may issue a mutual consent. Resolved further, staff determines the proposed alteration does not meet the intent of this policy, and the member desires to pursue the proposed alteration. Staff shall process the request as a variance for review by the committee. And resolved further, all proposals for revisions that are not considered minor or alter the exterior aesthetics of the unit shall require board approval via the variance process. Resolved further, officers and agents of this corporation are hereby authorized on behalf of the corporation to carry out the purpose of this resolution. I move this resolution.
Thank you. It's been moved by Director Blackwell and seconded by Director Ackercar. Any discussion on this one? Seeing none, would you please vote? Okay. Director Ackercar, do you need to vote verbally?
Try mine.
I think it's recorded already.
It's just not
Yes,
showing
it
on the
is
screen.
now.
Okay, now we're all right. We still have one more?
He's out of the room.
Oh,
Okay,
that's true.
all right. 12A passes on a vote of 9-0 with 9-0 with no abstentions. And we go to item B, which is entertaining a motion to adopt a resolution to amend the care provider policy and change the name to private caregiver policy. Would you read that resolution, please?
Private caregiver policy. Staff has recommended enhancements to the existing care provider policy. The private caregiver policy will encompass part-time and long-term caregivers whenever scheduled day or night, and whereas the private caregiver policy addresses caregivers irrespective of whether they are paid or not paid, now therefore be it resolved March 12, 2019, the Board of Directors of this corporation hereby adopts the care provider policy and renames it the private caregiver policy as attached to the official minutes of this meeting, and resolve further that Resolution 01-1728, adopted February 14, 2017, is hereby superseded and canceled. Resolve further that the officers and agents of this corporation are hereby authorized on behalf of the corporation to carry out this resolution as written.
Do I have a motion to accept this policy?
I so move.
Thank you. And a second? All right, we have a motion moved and seconded to accept this policy. I'll now accept speakers, excuse me, for discussion. And remember, you only get to speak once, and you have 3 minutes to speak in favor of or against. We'll start with Director Blackwell.
Thank you. I cannot vote in favor of this policy. I believe it goes against our bylaws and against the state law, and we will hopefully hear from our attorney on those matters. As such, it would be in conflict with laws, federal, state, local, or bylaws, and that would mean it's a motion which is always out of order. It disagrees with California Civil Code 51.3 in that permitted healthcare resident is mentioned in the law, which means it was considered by the legislature. They limited to permitted healthcare resident, which is a live-in, which is what this policy covers. A person hired to live in long-term terminal healthcare with a qualifying member or a family member with the resident providing care. The care provided must be substantial in nature and must provide either assistance with daily living activities or medical treatment or both. The current policy fits on all corners with the law. Our bylaws say on page 2, section 4B, a primary physical support, a resident caregiver may be given if giving primary physical support to a qualifying resident. The current existing policy has that permitted. It is according to the bylaws and according to the law, and therefore should not be altered by the new one, which has no showing of need by a resident that they need any help at all. The whole thing apparently can be done simply by processing and providing the 2 applications, one to the state with the fingerprint check and the background check, and one to United, and just checking off things with no verification of need and no promise that they indeed will spend even 1 hour with a person a year. As such, I don't feel that this is adequately, I think the one we have is perfect. It will not allow everybody in for any reason, and that's because we are not outside the gates. We are inside the gates. And inside the gates, we have to follow our laws, and we have to follow the senior laws as I see them. Were this more stringent, were this more specific, Jeff made 4 recommendations. He said, have the doctor's permit, doctor's recommendation remain. That was not in here. He said, have someone prove what they did or verify what they did. There was not put in here. And there is no statement by anyone that any event is occurring to serve the resident. So this basically opens the door to anyone over 18 who wishes to live with me, my 30-year-old nephew. Thank you.
Right. Excuse me, back to doctoring. Director Randazzo.
Thank you. I can't check anybody's heart or anything else, okay, and I'm not that type of a doctor, and I'm not a doctor at all. In any case, I am voting yes for this particular item, provided that our attorney can stipulate that it meets our bylaws and the state law. If it does not meet the bylaws and the state law, then it becomes an illegal item, so therefore it doesn't make any difference what we vote on. So that question was addressed to our attorney at our governing documents meeting, and I'm hoping that he has an answer for us. But if it's not going to meet our bylaws and legal issues within California, okay, then I'll have to vote against it. Thank you.
All right, next is Director Armendariz.
Thank you, Anita. I had the same question. I wanted Jeff our legal counsel, to comment on what Maggie said, to see if he's in agreement with it, or whether this resolution, the way it's stated, is fine and acceptable, legal, and meets all of the requirements. Thank you.
I'm saving him for last.
Cash. He should have been.
No, next was Director Morrison. Yes,
This doesn't work.
Okay, but I have you on my list.
Oh, you do? Okay.
So,
it doesn't show me here.
I've got 2 ahead of you.
I am also against this. This community was set up as an active senior community. We were not set up to be an assisted living community. And I think if you get to that point, you need to look into assisted living or maybe the towers. And I think those are alternatives, but I think we're opening ourselves up to a lot of problems.
Director Addington.
I was going to defer my time to Council Beaumont.
Okay, well.
Can I do that?
He's going to speak last when
Okay,
everybody's
well, I
had
thought
their
if he
say.
needed 3 extra minutes, he could have mine. That's it.
All right, Director Bastani?
I'm also for it if this meets the legal requirement. I will vote yes on this.
Thank you. Director Torn?
I thought we discussed in during committee meeting that this is a private caregiver policy. This is not a physical care caregiver policy. There are distinctions between these two. One is to help them out with their general activities. The other one is really helping them out with medical conditions, with people with medical conditions. I think there are two issues here. And I think the law applies to the medical conditions, not just helping them out with their daily activities. Unless there's any violation of the laws, otherwise I will vote for it, and hopefully they will make the life. But I do agree with Director Morrison's comments that some of the residents in that kind of situation may need to consider assisted living or tower or other nursing homes. My mom was in that situation, and I moved her into a nursing home, and life is much, much better for both of us. If she lives in here, it will be a really tough situation for me to take care of her 24/7. I have no ability to take care of her 24/7. So it's, in that serious situation, I would highly recommend people to consider that. So that's my vote for that. Thank you.
Director Ackerkar?
I believe our social services has put a lot of time into it, and there is a merit for this policy as long as it is administered properly so that our age requirement doesn't change. I also would like to see how we're going to monitor these people from not using our services, and I would like to suggest their badge colors will be different than any other one, so they cannot use our facilities when they're assisting the so-called member requiring the service to play around a golf, and that they don't come in and play golf with them. So basically, I think we need to make sure they're identified properly and they wear their badges properly anywhere they go. I'm for this thing because a lot of time and energy has gone into discovering facts and figures. I believe Susan has done an excellent job, and I'm going to vote yes for it, and then depend on our staff to monitor it correctly. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Stone? Nope, I'm going to let everybody speak. Jeff gets to talk last.
Mary Stone, 356C. Yes, I'm against this policy as well. I feel that it has muddled the difference between those who are going to reside here more than 60 days and those who are just doing normal activities that assist a person on a daily basis. I think what we need to do is possibly separate this between the actual live-in private caregivers and the personal caregivers. I call it personal. One is to help them with, activities to make their everyday life easier, but it's not primary physical or financial support, or as the law requires. I really feel that the policy itself is poorly written and needs a lot of work. And I felt extremely upset at our governing docs meeting when we weren't allowed to discuss it at the committee meeting, because I felt that that's where we should be discussing it, not here.
Okay, thank you. Maxine McIntosh?
Sorry, I forgot to move up closer. I want to say that overall, however you handle this, however you change it, whatever motion is made and you approve today or disapprove, whatever, that there are thousands of people, as you may realize in United, who are grateful that you're taking care of this. When you talk with people, I've talked with two of my neighbors in their late 90s, the most important thing to them is to stay in their own home as long as possible. And that ends up meaning caregiving. And I have a good friend who turned 90, had a bad accident, and had to have caregivers around the clock. She said it's so important that she's in her own home. Her son was willing to put her in assisted living. So these needs are something we don't really, I hadn't thought about it much. We don't really think about it much till we're in that situation. And probably most of us will be someday because we're healthier and we're living longer. Yay, but it had to be handled. So whatever decision you make, I am so glad you are doing it and you're trying to make it easy for our residents to have caregivers when they need them, whatever hours a day, however many months. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing no more speakers, I'd like to go to our council. Would you like to finish this up? The question seems to be from many of our directors on the legality.
Sure. Thank you for allowing me to speak on this, and I'll try to respect everybody's time because this issue brings up many, many points of discussion, not just from a legal standpoint, but from a governance standpoint. I have tremendous respect for Ms. Blackwell. She's a colleague of mine, retired attorney, and she raises great points from both sides, from the legal side and as well as the governance side. But let me, if I may, just pave the way for the discussion, which is, and I think we should hear from staff as well, because it's nice just to get further confirmation from their perspective as to why they're recommending this from an administrative standpoint. Because when the board makes a decision to adopt policy and procedures and rules, it has to be made based on information being provided, and sometimes you weigh the risks with the benefits. So with every rule change, there's going to be benefits to the community as a whole, but there's also going to be risks from whether it's a cost standpoint, administrative standpoint, or maybe to a small segment of the community. But for the greater good of the community, the board feels it's in the best interest of United. And I think that information, even though staff's already briefed the board about it, it can't be overemphasized here today and for those that are watching. Because this policy, to Ms. Stone's point, isn't easy. When you read it, you have to read it a few times. There's a lot of moving parts, and I think because of that, and because of the complexity of the law, that's why we're here today discussing this on so many different levels. But just to begin, 51.3, the Civil Code, was enacted under the Unruh Civil Rights Act to prohibit unlawful discrimination. There's an exception which allows discrimination based on age, and it allowed developers to create communities that are specific to persons 55 and older. That's age discrimination, but in California, that's legal. So 55 and older communities are legal. You can prohibit people under 55 from residing here, but there's exceptions. Before we get into the exceptions, let me tell you the consequences of enforcing that 55 and older requirement. If a board is not actively enforcing the 55 and older requirement, and on record, at least every 2 years, being able to show that more than 80% of the residents are 55 and older, you will lose your 55 and older age-restricted status. So the law recognizes there's a cushion. About 20% of residents could be less than 55. Why did they anticipate that? Why did they put that in place? It's for practical reasons, which is you can't be expected to be in everybody's home every day, 7 days a week, 365 days out of the year. So the law anticipates that if someone were to pursue litigation challenging your age-restricted status and was able to prove that maybe a couple of their neighbors were younger than 55, that's not going to defeat your age-restricted status as long as you're within that 80 percentile of being 55 and older. But that doesn't mean the board can be lax and not pursue compliance and be able to verify that at least 80+% of the residents are 55 and older. So keep that in mind, because now we need to go on to the next step, which is what exceptions are there under the law that allows people younger than 55 to live in your community. And there's a couple exceptions. There's an exception that allows a qualified permanent resident to live in the community. So if you're 60 years old and your spouse is 50, your spouse is a qualified permanent resident. They can live in the community with you. And there's other definitions of that type of resident, but that's one exception. The other exception, which is relevant for today, is being a permitted healthcare resident. And Ms. Blackwell cited 51.3. It's a section that discusses permitted healthcare residents, which is a person that's either hired or a family member that provides live-in, long-term, or terminal health care to the qualifying resident. That's what we're discussing today is who can live in a unit and provide care that's less than 55 years of age, and it's a permitted health care residence. Well, does that mean anybody under 55 that's providing some kind of live-in, long-term, or terminal health care can live in a unit? No. The code goes on to state that the care must be substantial in nature and must provide either assistance with necessary daily activities, like waking up and putting your clothes on, like walking to the restroom, like sitting on the toilet, like brushing your teeth. Those are major life activities, and that's defined by law, federal and state. Or medical treatment, or both. So they must provide substantial assistance for major life activities or medical treatment, or both. If these individuals who are younger than 55 and they're providing substantial care with respect to necessary daily activities or medical treatment, they fall within the exception and they're allowed to live here. And you will not lose your age-restricted status. Now, going to the board's consideration of this policy, the board has vast discretion to adopt rules and regulations, as long as they're in compliance with the law and as long as they're in compliance with your governing documents, which is your bylaws, your occupancy agreement, and your articles of incorporation. The legality of this, and I reviewed this very carefully, is clear in my eyes, which is, with all due respect, Ms. Blackwell, I disagree with you. It's legal. It's compliant with federal and state law. It's compliant with your governing documents. The issue, though, that the board has to be comfortable with is where this policy is going and what it's seeking to accomplish, because it goes into a territory that the law leaves open for interpretation. What is care that is substantial in nature? You tell me what care is that's substantial in nature. Necessary daily activities has been pretty well defined by federal and state law. And I told you what that is. We're helping getting up in the morning, getting dressed, etc. But at what point does that care constitute substantial care that triggers someone's right to bring in someone younger than 55? This policy defines activities of daily living, personal hygiene, dressing, eating, maintaining continence, toileting, transferring mobility, ambulating. Those are all activities of daily living, which, in my opinion, are very, very clear, necessary daily activities. That if someone's providing those services on a daily basis, that's substantial in nature for purposes of the civil code. The definition next in the policy under 2B, which is instrumental activities of daily living, and again, your policy defines what activities qualify someone for providing care to an individual on a live-in basis that are younger than 55 to qualify them for residency, not meeting the age restriction. So your policy sets forth what types of activities are permitted of someone that's providing care that qualifies them as an exception under the 55 and under rule. And the next definition of instrumental activities of daily living talks about companionship and mental support, transportation and shopping, preparing meals, managing household, managing medications and finances, communicating with others. If you're comfortable that those activities are substantial in nature with respect to necessary daily activities, then this policy can and should be adopted. From my outside perspective, I have also concerns about how you're going to regulate this to ensure that someone doesn't come in, fill out a form, and say they're providing companionship and mental support, they're helping with preparing meals, and they're not just sitting back, watching TV, and going to class down at the university, right? Living with their relatives on a rent-free basis. I've talked to staff about this concern, and they acknowledged the issue, but assured me that it's easily identified if someone's taking advantage based on their habits, their activity, their age, etc. That's something you all, as a board, need to work with staff and make sure you're comfortable with. I'm here to talk about the law, and with respect to the law, this policy conforms with the law as long as you and staff can get together and make sure that the activities in Section 2B, number one, are being performed by this individual, and they're just not here to live with a family relative, family member, while they're going to the nearby university, or that they're just providing some limited services which aren't even close to being substantial, and whether that's enforceable. So again, if I were on the board, I would sit back and just listen to staff's advice. They're the experts. They're providing you with the information as to why they're recommending this. And as long as you're comfortable with the plan they have in place to make sure that this is complied with and it's enforceable, then from my perspective, it's a very sound policy. But that's just something we need to keep our sights on to make sure that if you do adopt this, that you're working with staff to make sure that this is not an area that residents are trying to take advantage of to bring in underage residents and using laws that are designed to protect those that are deserving protection, those that require care, those that can't get up in the morning without help, and instead they're using this policy and laws to try to get a free ride. And that's my concern.
Thank you. We have 3 staff members here. I'll start with Chief Moy.
Well, good morning, Madam President, honorable board members. Thanks for the opportunity again to revisit this. I feel like we've all learned quite a bit about the caregiver policy over the last several months. But I want to tell you one of the reasons why we revisited this policy is one, because it was not working. We do have a policy in place, but we've got quite a few residents, a large number of residents that are not signing up. They're underground, basically. We have caregivers in this community. I agree, Director Morrison, this is an active senior community, and we are getting younger. But at the same time, I think there is a need to provide for some of our seniors who do need a little bit more. Our goal in this entire process has been to propose changes that are going to enhance the policy and be able to provide for those who need it. But we know it's tricky. We want to make sure that it's not being abused, and that has definitely been discussed here today. But are we going to make something so difficult to weed out the few when we should be trying to help the majority? And that is one of our concerns. A few things that we do, and Director Blackwell has brought this up to us, is applicants must register with the state. They must be live scanned. They must conduct a background. But when someone gets in here and we feel that they are violating the policy, it is our responsibility as security and compliance to conduct an investigation and to hold them accountable. So it's just not a free ride here once they get in. Council was very eloquent in speaking to some of the definitions of ADL versus IADL. ADL are those activities of daily living that we believe would necessitate a live-in caregiver. And that was, again, personal hygiene, dressing, eating, maintaining continence, toileting, transfer mobility, ambulating. That makes sense to us. We would recommend that a live-in caregiver be provided. And that was something that we wanted to make a point with you. For those that are just preparing meals, transportation, doing a little bit of housework, we do not recommend that. We do not believe that those types of people should be live-in caregivers, and that's one of the things that we'll be monitoring. Someone who checks those boxes, and maybe they falsely check them. Maybe they check the parts about the personal hygiene and other things that we find in Section A, which we believe. Again, that's our job to take a look at it and to enforce it. The other things, you can be a caregiver, just not going to live here. And that's the main point that we're trying to make here. And secondly, for us, we do want to have one consistent policy here that we can then work with this community, that we can market well, that we can get more residents to buy into. We believe that with all that are currently what I refer to as underground, we're going to go on a marketing campaign to see if we can get people to support this program, to work with social services, to work with resident services, to work with compliance and security, so that we can go from just a few hundred to a more accurate number of caregivers that we do have in this community. So I'm available for any questions. I also have our team here that's ready to answer any questions that you might have.
Director Morrison.
Mr. Moy.
Sir.
How do you prove?
Mike.
Oh, I'm sorry. How do you prove that someone living in the manor is showering, helping the person in the bathroom? I mean, how does one prove that type of thing? And this is where I think I wonder how we're going to really enforce this.
Sure. So that's a tough one to answer with just a one response fits all. That's just not the case. Every case is unique. Let's say we have an individual that is 65 years old. We get complaints by the neighbors that we've got a 22-year-old kid who's living at the manor and is going to school. But we see the resident who is very capable, who's out playing golf, who's very active in this community. I think we have to conduct an investigation to work with what resources are presented to us. But it's not easy. Are there going to be a few that slip through? This is not airtight, right? We know that there are numerous policies that people attempt to take advantage of, and we do our best to enforce them. Am I concerned about this becoming a situation where we have a large number of kids living here who are just taking advantage of this policy? No. Do I think there are going to be a few that slip through? Probably. To the extent that this board is concerned about, no, not at all. No, this is going to be something that we're going to spend a lot of time on. We're going to do the best of our ability. But when a person says that, and we have no evidence otherwise, it's going to be very difficult to turn some of those away.
Director Armendariz.
Thank you, Mr. Moy. I believe we've heard from all the directors and from Jeff Beaumont as well as this gentleman. So I'm requesting we go ahead and take a vote because we could debate this for hours if we wanted to. So I'd like to see us take a vote.
All right, a request to call for a vote takes a 2/3 majority. All of those who are in favor of, it does not require a second, by the way, I clarified that. All of those who are in favor of going to the vote, please indicate. Can we do that electronically or do we need to? By hand. Let's do it by hands. All of those in favor, please raise your hand. I'm going to a vote. 1, 2, 3. All right, the motion fails. We'll continue with debate. Next up is Dr. You're going to be a doctor before I get out of here. Director Randazza.
My mother always wanted me to be a doctor. She was disappointed I became an engineer. Chief Point, I have a couple of questions. People have brought up to me, okay, in governing documents and what have you, they thought that the language in this thing needs to be tightened up a little bit more. And the other adjunct to that question is the fact that they thought that these application forms should be split up, one for a 24-hour caregiver, which would mean the live-ins, and then one for just have this thing separate, okay, two applications, and one would be for the daily caregiver, the guy, the woman, whoever shows up at 7 o'clock in the morning and leaves at 5 o'clock at night. So that question has some viability because of the language itself, okay, yeah, we're going to go out there and we're not going to be able to police this thing, okay, as you said, okay, we can only do as the best we can, but the possibility of tightening up the language and making this a two-application process, okay, is that something that you say has some viability?
At this point, I'm all for keeping it simple to the best of our ability. That's the direction we want to go. Either you support a live-in caregiver or a caregiver that's not living in, and we can build this off of this application. That would be my response, sir.
Okay.
Director Bastani.
I agree both with Jeff's recommendation as well as Mr. Moy's recommendation in one sense. Mr. Moy is more concerned about enforcing this. And maybe it's difficult to enforce it, but I feel that as long as there's no violation of occupancy agreement, like if there is 2 rooms in a place, 2 bedrooms in a place, not more than 3 people can live there, then certain of the exceptions like companionship, etc., I think is important because it prevents people getting into, without companionship, they may get into a mental problem. And preparing meals, for example, if there is not that is not done at home, then the thing is that they have to order from restaurant, which is expensive, or have to drive to the restaurant, which needs somebody to drive them there, and household work. So I feel all these things are valid for a caregiver. So I would vote yes for this. And I don't like Mrs. Stone's recommendation is splitting care. If we go into private care and personal caregiver and then day caregiver, it's become so complicated. It will be more difficult to handle. Thank you.
Director Addington.
Chief Wood, first of all, I'm 100% confident that Jim Booth can do just that. Oh, sorry. I'm totally supportive of your outfit's capabilities on the one hand. On the other hand, we have a policy now, and I think you guys are doing a good job of enforcing it, but it's not like we're starting at 100% compliance at this point. And especially with this instrumental activities of daily living, the companionship and the preparing meals part, I thought you just said that we wouldn't think that you should be a caregiver under this just for that. Did I miss that?
You were correct. Live-in caregiver, ma'am.
Because live-in, right. Because I keep reading this and it sounds like they can, and maybe I missed this, but it sounds like they can be a caregiver if all they're doing, I shouldn't say all, it's very essential. Companionship, transportation, preparing meals, that B list. And so, as I understand it, they could be under this program just for those services, for live-in. Am I wrong on
No,
that?
ma'am, that is correct. That is a form of a caregiver, but the board gets to determine whether they are not, or they are a live-in
just from your
caregiver, or just a regular caregiver that comes in and provides a service during the day, but does not stay here overnight. So you can come in and you can provide that mental support, that transportation, that preparing meals, managing households, but that doesn't justify being a live-in caregiver. Those things can all be done during the day.
I'm missing something then? And I'm not arguing with anybody. It looks to me, I've read this thing 1,000 times.
Sure.
Well, okay, 100. And I just want to establish, as you read it, that this could be the basis for a live-in caregiver if all you were supplying was the items contained under B, just for my information. And then also, do we have a current percentage? Does compliance have do we look and see what percentage of under 55s we have living like right now?
I do not have that.
Because, I mean, we can say how many
we have. We have a very small number of caregivers that are actually signed up, in the hundreds, I believe. I think that would come through resident services.
I was just, because that's crucial, right? Because like if we were at 18 or 19%, I would have a much greater concern about this than if we're at 5 or 6%. When I'm talking about the 20% that are allowed under the age of 55.
Ma'am, the civil code, the caregiver does not violate the civil code.
This is not a dialogue.
Okay, I'm sorry.
You have a question, he answered, that's all we can do.
That's what I was asking, was about the percentage. Sorry, thank you.
All right, Director Blackwell, you have already spoken. The last speaker will be Director Ackercar, who made the motion and therefore gets the final word.
Basically, I agree with what Tim is saying. Our community needs, we have people that need this kind of service. Why should we penalize them by not having this resolution go through? If the resolution go through and it is properly maintained or properly governed by our staff, I think we should go for it. Because we'll be penalizing people who really need this kind of service. Genuinely. Of course, we'll get a few that will fall cracks, and we will have some that will take advantage of this rule, but we will have to make sure that that does not happen. And one thing I suggested earlier was to put a different color badge and monitor, and I'm fully confident we have a good staff here to monitor that. But some may fall through cracks, so be it. Let's vote for it, let's see how it goes, and if we don't like it, we can always come back and change it. We can change no problem. This is the law, and I agree with Mr. Beaumont, and he put the law down and he's saying we can do this. Thank you.
All right, as chair, I have the privilege of the last talk, because I did not have my honor. I am in favor of this, because as Director Ackercar has pointed out, if it doesn't work, we can change it. That's one of the joys of and also the concerns and bad things about the way we do things. We can always rescind a resolution. We can always make changes to it if it doesn't work. Secondly, we are a co-op here, and these private caregivers would not be a shareholder or qualify as a co-occupant. So they're kind of in a different category as a private caregiver. And I think that that takes care of our bylaws, and I think our attorney has talked to the legality of it. So let's go ahead and vote, please. All right, the vote is 7 in favor, 3 against, with no abstentions. So the motion passes and the caregiver policy will be approved. Thank you. All right, the next item under unfinished business. And I'm sorry, Madam Secretary, I think you had, the motion was made by Cash, not Director Armendariz.
Right.
And seconded by Director
All right, I'll
Addington.
correct that for the minutes.
Okay,
Thank you.
All right, C is entertaining a motion to adopt a resolution for administrative fee for damage reimbursement. Do I have a?
Yes, I'll read it. Resolution 0119XX, administrative fee for damage reimbursements. Pursuant to Civil Code 5855, the mutual is required to hold hearings to impose any monetary changes to reimburse the mutual for costs incurred in the repair of damage to common area or for facilities caused by the actions or inactions of a member, his or her tenant, guest, invitee, or vendor. Whereas significant staff time is necessary to investigate, document, and prepare concise reports for damage reimbursement hearings for damage caused by a member, and whereas the mutual has seen an increase in administrative costs related to these damage reimbursement proceedings, now therefore be it resolved, March 12, 2019, the Board of Directors hereby adopts the damage reimbursement administrative fee. Resolved effective April 1st, 2019, the administrative fee for costs related to damage reimbursement proceedings will be 10% of the total reimbursement decision for all decisions of $1,000 or more. Resolved further that the officers and agents of this corporation are hereby authorized on behalf of the corporation to carry out the purpose of this resolution. I move this resolution.
Do I have a second? All right, it's been moved by Director Blackwell and seconded by Director Armendariz. Is there discussion on this? Director Eckercar.
As a chair of the architecture committee, when 3 of the members voted for it, I had to pass it further to this group. But I see a couple of points here that I want to mention. I am against it, primarily because our staff is saying that it'll generate only about $13,400 of funds if we accept this. But that's a small amount to charge people who already will be charged heavily for the damage that happened and we are trying to collect from them. And I don't feel like putting another burden of 10% of that amount, further increase that amount by another 10% to offset the staff time. The staff time is there. I mean, staff does work 8 to 5 or whatever their time is. And I don't believe that this takes their extra time after work that we need to pay them another $13,400 for taking care of some of the residents who had problems. So I'm against this. I'm not going to vote for it. I'm the chair of the architecture committee, but I had to bring it forward because the members voted to move it forward. Thank you.
Okay. All right, seeing no other directors who wish to speak, I'll ask you to vote.
Tied.
All right, you're going to have to vote again. There was a tie, 5 in favor and 5 against. And since Director Liberatore is not with us today, we only have 10 members. That means it's a tie.
It fails.
Okay, so
it fails.
You're right. I'm sorry.
It
A
goes
tie
back
fails.
to the architecture committee.
A tie fails.
Right.
All right. All right, we'll go on to what was 11D and is now 12D. And that's the consistent with statutory obligations under Civil Code 5501. The subcommittee of the board consisting of the treasurer and at least one other board member reviewed the United Laguna Woods Mutual financials for the month of January, and such review is to be ratified. And we have their ratification of what they
Right, that was what they checked.
So, okay. First of all, I need a motion.
I move that we ratify this report.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. We have a motion. Not good today. Moved and seconded. So we're in discussion, and let's see who we got. Director Margolis.
I move that we move this to the closed meeting because I think it's going to take a considerable amount of time, and I don't think that it is the type of thing that we need to talk about here in front. I think we have a lot of things we need to figure out better than what we have done in the past so far on this motion.
All right, so let's see, how do we?
I amend the motion to be moved to closed meeting.
Okay, is there a second to move it to the closed meeting? Director Bastani? Okay. We have an amendment to the motion to move this item to our closed meeting. All those in favor, please use your voting screen.
Okay.
We
Yes.
need to ratify it.
Just to clarify, if it's going to go in the closed, it has to fall within one of the permissible topics for closed session, which is contracts, personnel, litigation or legal matters, disciplinary.
All right, you're right, it's not discussion of financial, so.
Perhaps an alternative would be to send it back to committee. I don't know, I'm just.
It's not in.
No, let's go there. Okay, Director Armendariz.
At the February 12th board meeting, I brought up this topic. And the reason I'm resurrecting it again is that at that meeting, I pointed out that not all of the records were available that were supposed to be reviewed in compliance with 5500 and 5501, Civil Code. And we had a special meeting on February 25th to go over that. And at that meeting, I provided a list of the areas that this was deficient in. And I came away from that meeting with the impression, based on Betty Parker's comments, that most of those corrections or additional information would be provided. She then sent out a memo, which was dated March, I think, 5th. And all she did in that memo was add definitions of the different reports. And I'll just touch on two items that clearly show that the committee really doesn't have the basis for this ratification. The first one, if you look at the schedules that are provided in the director's room on the computer, you do not have a general ledger. A general ledger would have balances of the accounts. And in Betty's own definition, right here, the general ledger is the main accounting record of the company. And that general ledger provides the information from which the financial statements and cash flow projections, comparisons to budgets and all that, that is the core information. When you open up that schedule, it's even listed as a transaction list. It doesn't give you any beginning or closing balances. So if you, for example, wanted to trace those amounts into the financial statements, you couldn't do it. If you wanted to compare the book balances per the bank reconciliation, you can't do it. So that general ledger is not provided. That's an essential required document by law. Okay, getting back to the bank reconciliations, you are required to provide one that accounts for transactions for the operating account, for operating expenses. You're supposed to provide that for, same thing for transactions out of the reserve. Now, what I brought up to the directors, because I didn't think they were aware of it, was that the funds in payment of whether it's operating expenses or reserves, they are all commingled because they only have one account for handling those transactions. And in 2008, because it had been challenged before, because they didn't have separate accounts, staff was able to get a letter from a department, the Secretary of State, that said, so long as a separate accounting is done for each fund for all transactions, you do not need to have a separate account. Again, we do not have that record, that report that you can look at. The bank reconciliation has both types of transactions in there. You do not have a detailed list of the checks outstanding, which would provide you the date, the check number, and the amount by check. You just have a figure. Same thing with deposits in transit. So those are just two. I can give you more examples of that. But I think those are both important enough to demonstrate my point. There's no way in the world that you could ratify this. And I challenge the committee to give me proof of how they did this. I doubt if they can. So it bothers me to see something like this happen. I mean, you're talking about what directors are obligated to ratify under the law. And it's so easy for them to put a piece of paper like this together and sign it and say they've complied when they have not complied. And I'm trying to control myself because the last time when I brought this up at the meeting, I was charged with being unruly, making false accusations, and so on. I even got a censure letter. If you don't see me at future meetings, it's because they want to quiet me down. Okay? And I can't be quiet. This is too important. So there's no way in the world we can approve this. So I recommend to any director here that's listening, you cannot vote in favor of this. Any good book, you don't need to be a CPA, you don't need to be an accountant. Any good bookkeeper can tell you this does not comply.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Absolutely.
I'd like to address the censure issue that Mr. Armendariz just raised, which I prepared and sent at the direction of the board since it was brought up just now. That had nothing to do with the issue being brought up as to Civil Code Section 5500 or 5501 or the review of the financials being done by the treasurer and another board member. That had to do with specific conduct that took place during a meeting that was recorded. And the conduct is recorded on video. We don't have to go through it now, but it had nothing to do with the content of the issues that were brought up. It was the way the issues were brought up and the personal attacks, name calling, etc., that the board felt was unacceptable.
Thank you. Director Randazza.
I have to say I'm a bit confused right now because on February 25th, we did have that meeting. We went through this whole process. A number of directors indicated that they either didn't have the expertise, the time, or the wherewithal to go through thousands and thousands of documents on a monthly basis. And because of that, we all agreed at that time that we would, the law allows for a subcommittee to be formed or a subtask force or whatever you want to call it, that includes the treasurer and somebody else plus anybody else, okay? It could be as many as whatever, how many people. However, I said also at that time, okay, that I didn't feel the expertise to go through all these documents, even though it was the law, but the law allowed for a, as I said, task force to review these documents. In this thing, it was agreed also at that time that we would have a checklist that would be signed by those individuals to attest to the fact that that review was done by somebody that had some degree of expertise to review those documents. And in there, in item 5, it says check register, monthly general ledger, and delinquent assessment receivable reports, among other things on this document. They have attested to the fact that they've reviewed those documents to the degree that needed to be reviewed, and they've signed and documented it in an affidavit form. So if we're saying right now that we are not going to be able to vote on this thing, we're saying that this sub-task force right now is completely illegitimate, and basically those people have lied through their teeth that they didn't review this stuff. And is that what we're saying? I don't believe that that's what we're saying. We're saying right now that we agreed to do it through this process because we know it has a high degree of requirements within the government and within the laws, and we are allowed to have these 2-person or more subcommittee to do this work. And they did, and they attested to it. So at this particular point in time, I don't understand what the problem is.
Thank you. Director Torn.
I'm looking at the signature here, that review confirmation checklist. My question is, yes, we reviewed. What did you review? I understand repeatedly Treasurer has been noted making a statement that there are too many records for me to review. What do you want me to review? How can I review that many thousands of records? So I don't know what has been reviewed. And I want to know what kind of methodology you have gone through to make sure there is no embezzlement. I'm not saying you are embezzlement. Please don't interpret that I am saying you're doing embezzlement. I'm saying, how do we know that there's nobody's making doing the embezzlement? That's our job. This our residents' money. I understand that everybody is very honest. Let me repeat it again and again. Everybody is very honest, but there are occasionally people that are like to do some embezzlement. It happened here before. Okay.
It happened the year before.
No. Yes. No. Purchasing cars. Remember that? Okay. So we have all those cases happened before. How do we know that it's not happening again? Purchasing card. You don't know purchasing card? I thought you were in finance. Okay. So my question is, what kind of methodology have we processed, have we established to prove that we got things right? I have done some of these in the past, and I have the skill to do something like this in the past. And please don't laugh at it. I've done that kind of work. Okay. So, and I'm questioning how come I've never been even assigned to the on this kind of a committee and taught, share my experience with people to understand how can we do this, take care of these thousands of record check registers and find out something's wrong with it. For example, we've had water leaks somewhere, and nobody knows that until somebody find out later, or until somebody check the check register and say, check the general ledger and say, oh, this month we paid too much on the water bill. Something's happened. That's kind of a responsibility we need to have, rather than allowing it to happen over and over again. So this group, this committee, need to really work hard on telling us what's the methodology you used. You used to make sure there is no problem with our payment, with our money. That's our residents' money. That's our due diligence. Thank you very much.
Director Margolis.
At the meeting, I asked if the procedure would be given to us that they were going to use, and what we got was a checklist, and that is not a procedure, and I don't feel comfortable that the checklist, there is no vendor list so that they can check that the people that they're paying are true vendors. It's almost impossible to look at this check register and make sure that anything is correct in it. I looked at the data and I was saying to myself, I could not sign this piece of paper because I could not do diligence with this. I did not feel comfortable. I don't know what training they received, but there is insufficient data to do the job correctly.
All right. 2 comments. First and foremost, Director Tong, as Director Randazza said, anybody was invited, as were you, to be part of this if you wanted to. We assigned one person with audit background for many, many years to work with our treasurer. If you wanted to do it too, that's fine. We gave you the information about how to access the information. Secondly, we are a huge organization. We have paid staff that does all of the transaction fees, all of those kinds of things. What we look for is a summary. Does this work? Doesn't it work? If you want all of the policies and procedures of the finance department, which is many, many people who touch this, and that's why we pay them. That's why we have the MS. It is, all we do is ratify that we have gotten that information. Betty's here. Would you like to make any comments on this?
Certainly. I just want to remind the board that on March 5th, I sent you all a revision to that policy and procedure for board review of financial documents. So I added section 4, which was a definition of each of these documents that's required to be reviewed by civil code, an idea of what's in those documents and what a review might include. And so the board has that revised policy, and we certainly sat down with Gary and Elsie and went over that and went into the boardroom, showed them access to the documents. So I think we have thoroughly covered this topic, working with legal counsel and the 2 subcommittee members and the board to make sure that you have the information you're comfortable with to meet these requirements. I would just remind you that the civil code does say review, and it does not say anything more than review. It is not the same thing as an audit or a forensic audit, and it's being misconstrued that way.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Director Trong, you have already spoken on this. Jeff, did you have any comments that you wanted to make on this?
Nothing that, other than what Betty has already stated.
Okay. Again, it's a review, not an audit.
May I ask who else was there? Who else was notified there? I didn't get a notification.
In our board meetings, we notified you all that if you were interested in being in this project, that you talk to Gary. We assigned a task force. If you wanted to be part of that, if you wanted to do it on your own, you had access to that information. You were given those same things, the access to the computer.
I don't find it on my schedule. I don't know when it is.
There is no
even know it was happened already.
All right, we're not going to go over that. All right.
The secrecy that this board is holding, making this difficult to do our job.
Point of order.
There's no secrecy. All right. Would you please bring up the voting screen?
What was the motion?
The motion was the same one that is in 11D, to approve the review of January 20th.
The motion was to approve the financial review confirmation checklist for the Board of Directors of United Gunowitz Mutual California Nonprofit.
And who made the first and the second on
the motion was made by Maggie and seconded by Director Armendariz.
And if I may interject, just to be consistent with the civil code, the motion should read ratify, not approve.
Ratify.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Please vote.
Cash?
Yes.
All right, the motion passes with 6 yeses and 4 noes. Okay.
May I make a formal request to the treasurer that I want to be notified for the future?
Out of order, point of order.
When can I make this request? And when will people listen?
You can make it privately to him after the meeting. All right, now we go to new business. And we have 2 items on new business. The first is to entertain a motion to approve supplemental funding for the 2019 fumigation program. Apparently, we have more rats and whatever than we thought.
Termites.
Termites than we thought we were going to.
Actually, we had some persons not exiting their buildings, so the buildings could not be fumigated until now. Okay, so this is for supplemental funding for the 2019 fumigation program, whereas 2018 staff, along with the contracted vendor, Newport Exterminator, conducted visual interior and exterior inspections of various building structures throughout the mutual, and whereas evidence of termite infestations that require whole structure tenting were found at 37 building structures, which encompass 216 units and 3 carports, and whereas the adopted 2019 funding of $111,200 will cover only 14 fumigations and related accommodations, and the additional fumigations and hotel accommodations would require a supplemental appropriation in the amount of $104,762 to be funded from the contingency fund to complete the treatments in 2019. Now, therefore, be it resolved on March 12, 2019, the Board of Directors of this corporation hereby authorizes a supplemental appropriation in the amount of $104,762 to be funded from the contingency fund for termite fumigation and hotel accommodation for 37 building structures to be performed by the mutual's contractor, Newport Exterminating, during the 2019 fumigation program, and resolved further, the officers and agents of this corporation are hereby authorized on behalf of the corporation to carry out this resolution. I move this resolution.
Okay, thank you. It's been moved by our Secretary, Director Blackwell, and seconded by Director Acrikar. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote.
Wait a minute, I put in the request in it.
Sorry. Because the voting screen up, I don't see that. So Director Charng, if you have a question.
I would like to see the trend of the fumigation program. How many units have been, how many buildings have been done, or units, and that kind of information. And I wonder, why is it from contingency fund rather than from reserve fund?
Contingency is part of our reserve fund, sir. Secondly, if you want to see... No, contingency is different from fund. Contingency has a contingency fund, the reserve has a reserve fund. No. It's a different fund. No. The reserve fund is made up of the contingency fund and the equipment fund. There are many parts to it. It's all considered part of the reserve fund.
I'm talking about equipment.
Contingency is things that were unexpected. This was unexpected.
Well, wait a minute. We have a plan. We don't have a plan. It's
not up for discussion. If you would like to see more of the statistics and trends, you'll have to make a request of those to the maintenance department or to Carl, and he will pass it on to the maintenance department. All right, would you vote, please? All right, it's unanimous, 10-0-0. So let's go on to 13B. Entertain a motion to introduce a resolution to allow guarantors. Would you read that resolution, please?
whereas the United Laguna Woods Mutual is a nonprofit mutual benefit corporation existing under and by virtue of the laws of the state of California, organized for the purpose of providing its members with housing on a cooperative nonprofit basis pursuant to the provisions set forth in its articles of incorporation, bylaws, and board resolutions, collectively referred to as the governing documents. Whereas the corporation's amended and restated bylaws provides the purpose of the corporation is, among others, to manage, maintain, preserve, administer the business of a common interest development, specifically stock cooperative. Whereas the bylaws provide that the board of directors of the corporation is responsible for managing the business affairs and exercising corporate powers. Each shareholder is granted the right to occupy a specific unit with the ownership of one share in a cooperative. The board of directors desires the ability to enter into occupancy agreements with certain members, whereby same require guarantors to meet the corporation's financial qualifications in order to qualify for membership, and consistent policies regarding the same. Now, therefore, be it resolved on March 12th that the following resolution is introduced by the Board of Directors. Personal unconditional continuing guarantee and security agreement. Authorized to enter into this agreement. Attached hereto as Exhibit A and incorporated by reference. Specifically, the corporation may accept from guarantors a guarantee to pay a member's debt and obligation should the member default or otherwise fail to pay a debt or obligation owed to the corporation pursuant to the executed personal unconditional continuing security agreement, and cause security documents by which the corporation which require such evidence, the assets pledged by the guarantors. Oh, yes, I will go on. Okay. Further acts the Board of Directors may do and perform Board of Directors may do and perform such other acts and things as may be reasonably necessary and proper in order to carry into effect the provisions of this resolution, including but not limited to revising the current operative financial qualifications policy to allow prospective members to meet the corporation's financial qualifications, and to revise such other documentation as may be necessary and appropriate. I so move this and wish to amend.
All right, do I have a second? Second. All right, it's been moved by Director Blackwell and seconded by
All right.
Director.
Thank you. If you turn to page 4 of 13 and go down to the fourth paragraph, which says the undersigned guarantor, I would urge that that paragraph be deleted and substituted by a guarantor for a united unit may not be a guarantor for any other unit in Laguna Woods Village. A second amendment I propose is to add the 2 dots, page 2 of 13. Those 2 dots be in the policy, not just in the discussion, but moved into the policy, either in the resolution just before number 2. Move those 2 dots just before number 2, which is on the back page of the pink page, so that we do have what is required for a guarantor on the resolution. And
instead of referring to the financial requirements?
Right, because that's a whole different document. This way it's right there on the proposed.
All right, do I have a second to that? Yeah. Director. Morrison?
Okay, on page 2 of 13, and this may be what Maggie was talking about also, but the 5 years renewal, I don't see that specifically stated either. That we have to renew it every 5 years.
In the paragraph
It
above.
refers to UCC, but it doesn't really go into that.
It's in the paragraph, the second paragraph.
Where?
It,
Oh, that's the discussion.
Right.
That's not the same, that's not in the document itself. So it needs to be in one of the other two.
Where would you suggest putting it?
We could put it on Jeff, at number 3 at the end of page 5 of 13, should we just add it in at the end?
Page 5 of 13?
Or on 4 of 13.
9 of
13. I'm looking at 13B. 11.
You're not looking at the same thing we have.
Oh, I'm looking.
We have.
Oh, you want this one. Is it in there anywhere?
It's the original one before.
Okay, how about above number 3? That's just 11 of 13. Add in the 5 years. Such agreement, this agreement must be renewed every 5 years, or whatever it is you want to say.
Well, right now we're doing it annually. Verifying the financial information.
A guarantor.
The sentence right above number 3 on the pink pages.
That's just verifying the financial.
That's financial, so
Right.
that's where you want to put the 5 years?
Yeah, I think so. Put the 5 years right there.
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
I may be wrong in interpreting this, but on page 8, at the bottom, personal unconditional continuing war guarantee and security agreement is holding United as binds the corporation. Shouldn't it bind the guarantor rather than the corporation?
No. It's an agreement between the guarantor and the corporation,
So, but there's no mention of
not
guarantor.
the resident.
Am I right or wrong?
If you look on page,
Now, I understand on page 9, at the top, you would like it to say will bind the corporation and the guarantor.
And guarantor. Page 8 and 9.
Right.
Top of page 9.
Top of page 9, right. All right. Let's go forward with our board. Director Randazza.
Yeah, under the personal unconditional guarantee and security agreement is a signed document, and we're going to add, we'd like to add that 5 years to that document, but we'd also like to add those 2 bullet items to that document, because if they're going to sign it, they're going to know what they're signing for.
Right.
And not only go into the resolution, but the 2 bullets, satisfactory verification, and this in addition to prospective members minimum. If they're going to sign this document, then I believe those 2 bullet items or dots or whatever you want to call them also belong in the actual agreement that they're going to sign. And maybe some sort of a preamble that goes in front of that, because the way they're written right now may not be appropriate for with the way they should be written into the actual
Right.
guarantee agreement. And based on that, does that mean that we need to send this back to committee to make these changes, or what?
This can be, we can ask for the amended version to be brought back to us at the next meeting.
All we're doing with this is sending it on for 28 days of review, and we
Right.
can suggest that in that 28 days of review, that any changes be put into the final document, which we will vote on at our April meeting.
Okay.
All right, Director Armendariz.
Thank you. I agree with what Carl just said, that those two bullet items should be added. The second bullet item, I believe the language needs to be changed slightly.
Sure.
In that this, in addition to the prospective member's minimum annual income of at least $24,000 and marketable or income-producing assets that produce at least $75,000 in income. Right now, it sounds like assets of $75,000. That's not what is meant. You want assets that produce at least $75,000 of
It
income.
says income-producing assets of at least $75,000. Is that not assets producing income?
No, it says in addition to the prospective member's minimum annual income of at least $24,000 and marketable or income-producing assets of at least $75,000 is not the same as saying marketable and income-producing assets that produce at least $75,000 annually.
That's not what this meant.
Come on.
Yeah, we're expecting to have $75,000 more in income.
Nope.
No.
No.
Assets.
No.
Come on.
Assets.
How do you know what income that's going to produce?
$24,000.
It says and. It says and.
Right. If you look at our financial requirements, it's
Where does it say
exactly the
and/or?
same way before.
I'm looking at page 2 of 13.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where does it say and or?
Right here.
Right before market, it says marketable and/or income-producing assets. Unless you have a different, maybe you have a different copy than I
It
have.
says marketable and or talks about assets, not about the
Income
24,000.
Yeah.
No,
His income is 24,000.
You don't know what it's going to produce in income.
it's marketable.
We never know that about anything.
Okay.
Maybe the question at this point is, the last 4 words, the assets of at least $75,000.
Excuse me, Director Trong, you were not recognized.
Nobody's going to recognize, everybody's talking.
I have a list of people who wants to be recognized, and you are on it. When your turn comes,
But
I
when we
will
were discussing
recognize
that, you didn't ask for anybody.
you. You put reserved speaker.
Okay, I'll wait
Director
for my turn.
Addington?
I was just gonna recommend it go back to committee. I think these are too crucial, these changes. Excuse me?
Microphone.
Oh. I was just gonna suggest that we send it back to committee. I think these changes are too crucial, and I know we have another 30 days, but, these are pretty important without all of us going like this, and even if you're prepared for it, I think these are too important to just fix now. I think it should go back to committee. That's all I wanted to say.
All right, Director Bastani?
I missed the point made on page 4. Can Maggie elaborate
Oh,
that?
you want the wording for there?
You had some comments on page 4.
Oh, you do, other ones.
No?
My suggestion was that the following sentence replace the 4th spot down, and instead of the undersigned, see that paragraph, 1, 2, 3, 4?
Which way is it?
It's up at the top of page 4, go down 1.
First of all, 4 is irrelevant
Three.
because that's the
Yeah.
current policy. We are looking at page 10 of the proposed policy.
Okay.
The pink pages are the proposed policy, not the
Right.
white pages.
Well, they're both the same on that one.
Pretty much the same, but there are
Okay.
some differences.
And that the wording there, instead of saying the undersigned guarantor, okay?
Yeah.
We say a guarantor for a united unit may not be a guarantor for any other unit in LWV.
Well, the underside guarantee, and it is a united, why do we have to put that in?
Well,
And it
because-
does specifically call out the
Because-
village means
No.
what they are.
Okay, then I'll explain it. If we use this, then we say, we can only curb, we may, if we say it the way I want, we can either refuse a person because they are already a guarantor, or we prohibit a person from becoming a guarantor elsewhere and remaining a guarantor in United.
We can't do that.
It
That's up to
just
the
says
individual.
It just says it easier.
It's up to the individual mutuals to have that. If Third wants to recognize one guarantor, which they do not, then as of now, we can only speak for United.
That's what I say, a guarantor for a united
The
unit.
one who signs this guarantee for us
That's what I'm saying.
can't have a guarantor in any of the other ones that are specified.
So you don't like the change?
No.
Okay.
I think it's unnecessary.
All
I
right,
think
well,
that's
let's vote
why
on the
they're there.
amendment then.
All right, the amendment, well, it's not really an amendment.
No, it's not.
As such.
I
So
haven't
we
finished
need
my
to-
question.
Excuse me?
I haven't finished my
Oh, I'm sorry,
question.
Director Bastani.
I have another question, and that is this guarantor only guaranteeing the monthly payments, or are we allowing him to guarantee the purchase requirements as well? You know, the financial.
Right. Instead of our financial requirements that say 40,000 and 125,000, we're saying a person with 25,000 and 125 with a guarantor can purchase. So it is guaranteeing the purchase of
As
the
well?
share.
Okay, but as well as monthly payments?
Yes.
Yeah?
Because that's what the requirements are for the share.
Okay, that wasn't clear. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, Director Torn.
Going back to page 2 of 13, B, and in the middle of sentence, the second bullet, this is in addition to the prospective members' minimum annual income of at least 24,000. That has no argument on that. And the marketable and/or income-producing assets of at least $75,000. I understand what you're trying to say, but that's not what this sentence says. Is 75,000 describe the asset, or is 75,000 describe additional income generated by this asset?
The asset. The asset.
What's the asset?
So they only need to have $75,000 assets.
Correct.
Okay.
To have a guarantor.
Right.
But
So-
in
so
the
you want
past,
to-
we have not made the shareholder, who is the resident, have an income requirement if they had a guarantor. This puts in this saying they still have to have money to live here.
Okay, understand, agree on.
All right, we have 3 people in the audience that would like to speak. Maria Silva? Is she still here? All right. Sally Lacy?
Oh, it's good afternoon now.
Yes, it is.
My name is Sally Lacy. I live in Unit 61N. I've been a resident here for 9.5 years. I am also a realtor and have been since 1972. So we, as a whole, as residents and myself as a realtor and several of my associates, are most concerned about the financial qualifications and how they've affected properties here in the co-ops. And I will just briefly tell you an example we have statistics from March 7th of 2018 showing 85 co-ops for sale and 85 condos. 3/7/2019, we have 90 condos and 129 co-ops. So I understand supply and demand, but this is a little more than supply and demand because it's directly affecting the co-ops far more than condos. And I thank you for revisiting the guarantors because I think it's really important. We have so many people who would be good candidates as residents in the village, but they cannot qualify without a guarantor. And as it affected prices, we have seen a decrease in a $30,000 decrease in the prices of the co-ops in this same time period. So I would also ask, and I hope this isn't out of line, but that you might revisit the parents being able to have their children help them purchase in here. I, for one, have my son on my stock certificate as a 10% owner. My sister has her daughter on there as a 10% owner. I know there's several people who were able to purchase in here that way. Well, those are my two main issues. And again, I thank you for revisiting the guarantor, and I would ask that you maybe revisit the children being able to assist their parents in purchasing.
Children can always put that money in the bank for their children to buy.
But we've made the stipulation that they have to be...
They're not on the certificate.
No, I understand, but...
Right.
They have
I'm
to
sorry,
live
you're
in
correct.
there as well,
All right.
and that is not...
All right, thank you for your comments, and the other ones would be something that you should bring to the Governing Documents Committee, which is next 2 weeks, no, next Monday.
24th?
The 24th.
Okay.
It's 2 weeks, and they're the ones that would review the financial qualifications.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, Maxine?
I have a quickie one. Looking again at pages 1 and 2 of 13B, this, of course, is the official recommendation for the board to consider today. And I have one suggestion. When you go way down to the paragraph, just above the words financial analysis, in boldface there, and in the last sentence, evaluate whether it's equipped, statements, or otherwise worked through. Beaumont is a Taushishian to file them. You know, this is our current attorney, thank goodness, our excellent current attorney's name. But heaven forbid he might have to leave the mutual board one day. So I would humbly suggest that instead of putting his name there, you put the mutual, or you put United's attorney, the two words United's attorney.
Excuse me, where are you?
Okay, on page 2 of 13.
Well, this is just a staff report. This is not the resolution or anything like that.
It's called the official recommendation that leads to what you're going to vote on.
Exactly, but it has no legal there. This is just literally a staff report, as it says on the top of page 1.
Yeah.
And so 2 and 3 are part of that staff report, which is just a discussion of the history and where we are and suggestions from staff.
So the
which are then put into the resolution, and the resolution does not have that language.
So the recommendation would never guide any future decision making.
No.
Okay.
That's correct. Yeah.
All right.
This was prepared by our attorney of that firm.
Right, yeah.
Right, that's all it's.
Thank you.
All right. All right, we have 2 things here. We have a motion that was made by Maggie and seconded by Carl to approve this resolution allowing guarantors to go forward to our April meeting. No, there is no amendment. You can't amend it that way. If this is voted down, then we can have a separate amendment, a separate motion to send it back to the governing docs committee for further work. But
As amended. As amended. We can vote on it as amended. This is a hearing on the issue.
Tabling it or postponing
We're
it.
not
It's not an
tabling it.
amendment.
We are not tabling it. We are, our suggestion was we add in the 2 dots in a certain spot and we
So the
change
motion
that
is
sentence. That was the amended
to
motion.
send it to,
That-
forward to our April meeting. No, it hasn't been
There was-
voted on, so I say we need to
that,
vote
that
that
my
first.
changes suggested have not been voted on yet, and they can be voted on at this time.
President Skillman, there was
Yes.
no second on the motion to send it back to committee.
No.
The motion by Director Blackwell was to introduce with these amendments, and that's what the vote is for.
Right.
All right, so when it's introduced at our
No.
April meeting,
No.
it would have these
Yes,
changes in
yes,
it.
exactly.
All right, so with changes.
So that's.
All right, does everybody understand what they're voting on?
Can I ask for clarification?
Certainly.
So when this comes back to the board for the April meeting, it'll be the revised version?
Yes.
And at that time, will you then be voting to send it out for the 28-day comment period?
No. No, it'll be voting for it. Just-
So if in order to
That was
comply with
my
the
point.
28-day period, it has to be provided to the members in the amended form 28 days before the April meeting. So you need to make sure you get these changes done and this out quickly so you meet that 28-day requirement. Otherwise, it has to start over again. Because the members have to have the actual version as amended and have 28 days to review that amended version before you can sit down and discuss whether you want to vote to adopt it.
Okay, I mean, we.
So can we do that in one motion, or do we need to do it in 2 motions?
Either way.
Okay. Well, my thought was that we do the first motion, send it just forward, and then we have a separate motion that says we add these amendments to the resolution that would go forward.
We commonly do.
President Skillman, I would be willing to redline all the changes suggested by Director Blackwell. That would be on 28-day review, if that would be what the board wishes.
Director Armendariz.
I would like to have Cheryl read back to us what the amended resolution would be, which would be what Maggie wanted changed, and then the 2 bullet points added. That's what my understanding. So I'd like to have you read what the amendment would be so that we can vote on it, please.
Okay, Director Blackwell asks that the bullet items that are on page 2 be added to the resolution as part of item number 2, and that the wording to add the guarantor to the first paragraph on page 9, and then changes to Exhibit A, to change the wording there after the undersigned guarantor. So that would be the amendments. Those would be redlined, and that would be what would be published for 28-day review. And I would be willing to sit down with Director Blackwell to go over all these changes before we publish the amendment.
Okay. Director Randazza.
I also believe that Director Morrison wanted to add that 5-year stipulation in there also, and I think everybody was.
That's correct. I'm sorry.
So
I missed-
there's that 3rd item also, the 2 bullet items, the 3rd paragraph, and then the 5-year issue, whatever you want to call it. But those 2 bullet items will need to be sort of rewritten a little bit because you need to go into a document that somebody's going to sign.
I have a question of.
Director Blackwell.
Yes, it's a question of procedure. when then does one ever amend a motion? Because if we should make an amendment to the motion at the second hearing, that would be required to go for another 28 days forever. So this, as far as I recall, this is what we have done before, but we have amended it here. The initial motion goes out so the people are aware that something is out there. And that's the notices that it will be. And it can always be amended at a time at the meeting in front of everyone as it is being done. And then I believe it can follow the normal process. We just vote on it next time. And if we wish to make a different amendment on it next time, then we can take the final vote on that day. It would have to go to a subsequent 28.
So,
okay.
In effect, you're saying that we will have a resolution with suggested changes go forward to our April meeting.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. That's what we're voting on. Would you please vote? Yes, Dick.
Dick Rader, 270D. Just a point of clarification, because Jeff pointed out that you have to have 28-day notification. And what I'm wondering is, if you make amendments, where is the notification to the community? Where are they going to see it? Because you're going to vote on the amendments next time, right?
No. We are going to put out for 28-day review the resolution with the suggested changes redlined, and that's what will go out for 28-day review.
That's my question then. Where will the residents be able to see it?
As they do any of our resolutions online.
The red line one, because normally
it's not.
Normally, when I see something, it's on the agenda package.
We have very few people who get the agenda package, except those of us that are in this room. Most of them read it online.
It's published.
Online.
They don't get the.
So it will be. When will it become available for the 28-day notification? That's my question.
Okay.
When will the people be able to see it?
Cheryl.
President Skillman, we put in a binder at the reception desk all resolutions that are on 28-day review are available to residents to come look at that binder, and that's available right here in the community center.
When could you have the red line version there, I think is what he's asking.
It will be there tomorrow.
All right. So it'll be 28 days as of tomorrow. All right. Let's vote.
Let's vote.
Let's vote.
Let's vote.
And anytime we make an amendment, we have to go to the next meeting.
Yeah.
Anytime.
4360 is civil code.
I mean, even on the second hearing, when we think we're all ready, and somebody says, no, let's make it $75 instead of 50,
then it has to go back. That's why we want to put the changes in now to this, the one that's going out.
Thank you. Okay.
Still not working? No, it's.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Director Ackercar votes yes.
Cash voted yes. But his pen doesn't work.
There we go. You need one more.
Cash voted yes, but his pen doesn't work.
It's
on there.
Director Pastani?
It's on there.
Okay.
Director Pastani, we're missing your vote.
We're missing your vote.
Okay. 8 to 10. 8 to 2. Passed.
All right, the motion passes 8 in favor and 2 against. And we will go on to agenda item 14, which is committee reports. And we start with the report of the Finance Committee and our financial report. Director Morrison.
All right, slide 1. This is the Treasurer's report for March 12th, 2019 board meeting. Through the reporting period of January 31st, 2019, total revenue for United was $3,517,000 compared to expenses of $3,214,000, resulting in net revenue of $303,000. Slide 2, please. All right, the next chart shows the same figures from the income statement, but compared to budget. So we can see that United ended the period better than budget by $466,000. Slide 3, please. The most significant favorable variances from the budget were attributable to outside services, which were mainly timing differences, and the budgets are spread evenly, and there are certain reserve expenditures which will occur later in the year. Utilities and telephone, there was less water usage for irrigation due to rainfall this year. And we have an offsetting variance that is included in that. For materials and supplies, we have unfavorable variance due to early purchases for tools and plumbing, and the budgets are spread over the year. So therefore, we may have assigned a large dollar amount for purchases, but we've spent some of that earlier. Slide 4. We have added this new slide for a visual representation of the budget variances. Green bars to the right represent favorable variances in outside services and utilities, while the orange bar to the left demonstrates unfavorable variance in materials and supplies. Slide 5. On this pie chart, we show the non-assessment revenues received to date of $149,000 by category, starting with the largest revenue-generating category, fees and charges to residents, followed by interest income, laundry revenue, and so forth. Slide 6, please. On this pie chart, we see expenses to date of $3.2 million, showing that our largest categories of expense are for employee compensation and property taxes, followed by materials and supplies, utilities and telephones, and so forth. Slide 7. This chart shows how much of our revenue went into operations, with $2,337,000 coming in from assessments and $113,000 coming from non-assessment revenue. This is compared to operating expenditures of $2,305,000. After backing out depreciation, which is not funded through operations, we can see the bottom line operating surplus of $163,000. Slide 8. The reserve balance on January 31st, 2019 was $21,870,000. Year-to-date contributions and interest to reserves were $1,067,000, while year-to-date expenditures were $910,000. Slide 9, please. We compare this to historical fund balances for the past 5 years on this chart, and we can see that we're pretty much in line from 2015 to 2019. Okay, our delinquency report as of February the 25th, 2019, we had a current month count of 22 at 113,793, and we had prior month count of 18 for 105,494, so we've gone up $4 and $8,299. We have recorded 1 lien. We have 2 files submitted to legal counsel, 4 files with collection agency, 6 files with NCB, and 1 lender for closure. We have 8 that are maintaining a balance below $1,800. Our chargeable services delinquency report is February the 25th. We had a current month count of 20 at $121,785. Our prior month was also 20, but at $106,486. So we're up $15,299 from the previous month. Our monthly resale report as of February 2019, we had number of resales to date of 39. Last year, 44. So we're down five sales or 11.4%. Our sales volume as of February 2019 was 9,538,300. Our sales volume of February of 2018, 12,073,640. So we're down $2,535,340 or a 21% year-to-date change. Our average resale price this year, $245,230. Our average resale price last year, $275,015. So our resale price is down $29,785 or 10.8%. Our monthly leasing report is the same at 9%. I just want to also make the statement that although sales seem to be down and prices seem to be down, they are for the whole county. That's the end of my report.
Thank you. All right, report of the Architectural Control and Standards Committee, Director Ackrock.
Madam Chair, there was no meeting last month. So the next meeting is on March 26th at 2 p.m. in Sycamore.
26th or 21st?
21st.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. For those that are interested in going to that meeting, please notice the room change. We have many room changes because of the new security thing. So the Elm Room is just right over here on this floor. All right, report of the Communications Committee, Director Blackwell.
Okay, I'd like to thank Elsie and Carl and Gary and Sue for their articles this time. They were very good in the Breeze. I'd encourage every director to read the Breeze all the way through. It's very informative. And I look forward to everybody's reports again this week. So thank you very much. Actually, they're due next Friday, so you have a week extra.
You have mine.
Thank you. I know Gary's turned his in already. Thank you very much.
All right, a report of the executive disciplinary hearings, Director Ackrock.
The committee met on February 28th, and all the resolutions were properly handled, and wherever required, we put requested the staff to get hold of the social services because there were a couple of incidents that needed social service support. That's all I have to report. Thank you. Next meeting is on March 28, 9 a.m. in Willow Room.
Okay, and that is a closed meeting.
It is a closed meeting.
All right, report of the Governing Documents Review Committee, Director Blackwell.
Okay, we met in February 25th. We discussed the updates to the guarantor agreement, of course. We discussed the possibility of a co-occupancy permit, and that will be continuing on at the March 25th meeting, as well a discussion of the possibility of allowing roommates. We did discuss the private caregiver policy, or rather we did have two presentations, and we will be discussing very soon the canvassing policy. GRF has reiterated the recreation handbook, which states all the recreation policies about canvassing in front of the clubhouses and so on. So we will have that available, but we will discuss the door-to-door possibilities of canvassing. So that will be soon, but March 25th is our next meeting.
Thank you. Report of the Landscape Committee. You're up next again.
Yes, the Landscape Committee meets April 11th. So we did not meet we met February 14th. So that, I guess that was afterwards. Oh, yes, we had the herbicide test update was that 7 products will, actually the whole report was given this morning. So I just ditto the whole Mary Stone report and somebody else's report. They covered everything. That's it. I have nothing additional to say. Thank you.
All right, M&C, Maintenance and Construction Committee, Director Randazza.
Yeah, we had a meeting on February 26th. We had a number of topics we were going to discuss. One of the topics was the termite fumigation, which we passed on to this board, and they approved the additional funding for the termite fumigations process. We also formed a task force to address our solar power plant, to look into various different aspects of our solar power plant and what was done in the past, what we need to do in the future. And that task force right now is active, and we will be having a number of meetings and going over various different documents. We then addressed the addition of pedestals as was under washers and dryers as was requested by one of our residents. And we had a give and take conversation and debate on what the merits were of that and what there weren't and what the ramifications of installing them were. And at the end of that whole process, we determined that we're not going to go forward with any additional pedestals under the United Laundry washers and dryers. We also addressed painting of the exterior alterations as part of our 10-year paint program. It seems that in a number of instances, when the buildings are painted as part of the 10-year program, all of the aspects of the building are painted with the exception of any alterations that were added by any of the residents. We thought we may have needed to add some additional stipulation or some additional verbiage or some documentation or what have you, and we found out, no, we did not. It's in the program. We just need to make sure that each of the residents, when a 10-year paint program is ready for their particular building, they'll be notified that they will need to paint that portion of their building to be in line with the rest of the building, and that'll be their responsibility. So, and that process is already in effect. We also discussed drainage concerns as a result of all the rain we've had recently. Downspouts, gutters, and various different ponding within the cul-de-sacs and streets. We acknowledge the fact that it is some sort of an issue that we would need to address for today and in the future, but it's not something that you can address overnight. It's a multi-year program, and we're going to address it as part of our budgets for 2020, see what we can possibly do this year with some contingency funding. We're going to look into that. But for the most part, we're going to start looking at drainage and gutters and downspouts as a priority within this community and put it into our budgets. But again, it will be a multi-year program. And then the date of our next meeting is April 24th in the boardroom. All residents are invited.
The Village Energy Task Force.
At the Village Energy Task Force, we discussed the EV charging stations, which there is we agreed and we voted on, and then the GRF board, GRF M&C committee, and then the GRF board approved additional funding to put eight charging stations, 4 bollards additional in the community center. And those bollards will then add to our inventory of electric charging here at the community center. There's already 4 stations out there. We also discussed the fact that the Ice Bear technology, which we had brought to the Energy Task Force as a possible cost savings measure, whereby our air conditioning systems within the various buildings could be enhanced by adding this Ice Bear technology, whereby you would be able to make ice at night, and that would be used to cool the coils in the daytime. That technology was great. It was going to be almost no cost to us because there was incentives by various different groups. And when we looked at it, They only have a certain size limits, and Ice Bear then did an evaluation for us, and it was determined that in this particular case, it wasn't cost effective or they didn't have the technology to support our particular units at this time. So that was put on the back burner. It's unfortunate, but it would have been a cost-saving measure, but it can't apply to us. And then we addressed the solar installation of the laundry rooms, which I mentioned in the M&C discussion that I just had, and that was a topic that we brought up as a result of this particular thing. So that's my report.
Okay. Resident Advisory Committee, Director Ackercard.
The committee met on February 14, and we had one gentleman come in with some noise issues, and it led to search of the permits of the upstairs unit, water noise issues, and the staff is presently trying to dig into it to see if there is any illegal activity involved. Also, after Director Margolis put my name on the
As you requested.
on the emails, I've been getting several emails, and I transfer them to appropriate staff members, and almost all of them have been resolved. So I would say about 3 of those and 1 of this. So we are doing pretty good, and I encourage people to attend the meeting because then you get to meet the staff person in person. And sometimes maybe my spam collector might chew up your email and you can get passed by. Thank you.
Thank you.
I need to say when my next meeting is. It's on March 14th at 4 p.m. in Sycamore Room upstairs. Thank you.
We'll go to agenda item 15, which is GRF committee highlights. Director Morrison, the Finance Committee.
Okay, the Finance Committee met January the 29th, 2019. We discussed the Investment Policy Task Force and put together the task force of Michael Cunningham, Gary Morrison, Diane Phelps, Steve Leonard, Jack Connolly, and Greg Grigliano. Safety in our investments is our #1 concern. However, we want to make sure that we're working with a vendor that has our best interests at heart. Statement of revenue and expenses for GRF. Total actual revenues year-to-date were $3,685,000 compared to the budget, which was $3,751,000, or worse than budget by $66,000 due to less rounds of golf played. Actual expenses year-to-date, $3,181,000 compared to the budgeted year-to-date of $3,518,000, or better than budget by $337,000 mainly due to timing. The Board of Directors authorized supplemental funding in the amount of $46,200 from the contingency fund to award a contract to Fair and Piers to study potential changes to Laguna Woods Village bus services to increase ridership, improve travel, and convenience for residences. Delinquencies for GRF, $68,000. We reviewed the GRF 2019 business plan. We discussed the need for emergency generators. We discussed 3% tariffs and the effects on budgets versus actual. We discussed the trust facility fee policy, which is a one-time non-refundable origination fee of $300 for the preparation of the promissory note and related records. Discussion also on payment options, late charges, and prepayment. We discussed insurance renewals for GRF, supplemental funding for the community energy consultant. The committee discussed various topics regarding the retention of a community energy consultant. Motion made and carried to recommend that the board approve a supplemental appropriation not to exceed $50,000 to be funded from the contingency fund. Our next GRF finance meeting will be April the 24th, 2019.
Thank you. Report from the Community Activities Committee, Director Margolis.
The committee did not meet. It will be meeting in March 14th. The topics are going to be drop-in lounge, garden center trees, and we will be finalizing the report on how to handle these things.
Thank you. Report of the Landscape Committee, Director Blackwell.
The Landscape Committee did not meet. It will, and this meeting on the 20th has been canceled. So they did, at an earlier meeting, hand out a very good creek report, which all directors have. I gave one to someone from the creek group so that they have, the residents have one copy of that report. It contains all the information from all the governmental entities and all the rules and so on that we have to follow in United and all procedures. And that's very informative. It is available. If you are a resident, you can either come look at one maybe or buy one for $10, I think. It would be the Creek Report, or you can contact Sally Sunderhouse or someone from the Creek Association because she has that report. Or contact one of the members of the committee and we will share ours or talk to you about it. Thank you.
Excuse me, when's the next GRF meeting?
They have canceled it.
Oh, okay.
So the next one will be April or May then.
May.
May?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So they didn't have any herbicide reports, so they didn't want to move ahead.
Okay. Report from the Maintenance and Construction Committee, Director Randazzo.
So at that committee meeting, we discussed the approval of the budget for the electric vehicle charging stations. Like I mentioned in the Energy Task Force, we actually approved the additional funding for that. And with that, we approved for the budget for 8 electric vehicle charging stations that will be installed on 4 bollards in the community center parking lot adjacent to the 2 others. This budget was approved at the GRF Finance Committee meeting and subsequently approved by the GRF Board. With this money, 4 bollards will contain a total of 8 chargers that will be installed. We are addressing the addition of them at that location and not in the community yet because it is a public space, and as such, if we add EV stations there, we are eligible under the Southern California Incentive Project to be reimbursed up to 75% of the cost, up to $210,000. The other reason to have them located there is the fact that we have most of the infrastructure in place to support the additions, and therefore this would minimize the cost of the installation. Within the village, there is no public access, so we are not eligible for any monies through the SCIP. In addition to that, at that meeting, we discussed walkway lighting bollards at clubhouses 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Our next meeting is April 10th in the boardroom, and all are invited.
Thank you. The Mobility and Vehicles Committee, Director Addington.
The meeting was held on February the 6th, 2019. This is Mobility and Vehicles, right? Mm-hmm. Right. The meeting was held on February 6th, 2019. The committee concerns itself with mobility issues, including buses and other transportation, as well as various vehicles utilized by VMS personnel. The contract for the upcoming study of the village bus system was signed on March 5th. The study will begin immediately with an open meeting on March 20th in the Clubhouse 1 main lounge. This will be the public's primary opportunity to give any input into this company that's been hired to survey and tweak and analyze our village bus system, so all are encouraged to attend. Your input is an important part of the study, and the residents are urged to attend. There will be a similar meeting the same day at the Towers at 1 o'clock. The committee will be looking at, this is a new subject, the committee will be looking at 3 or 4 models of buses being considered for purchase by GRF on March 15th. The next meeting will be on Wednesday, April 3rd in the boardroom. Thank you.
Thank you. Security and Community Access Committee, since Director Laboratory is not here, Director Bastani, do you have any report from that committee? All right. The committee met February 25th, and the next meeting is April 22nd, 1:30 in the boardroom. All right, back to Director Addington for the village traffic hearings.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I apologize. I left out on the Mobility and Vehicles Committee. The next meeting will be on April the 3rd, 2019 at 1:30 p.m. in the boardroom. Sorry about that. Now on to the Laguna Woods Village traffic hearings. This committee met on February 20th, 2019. The committee's purpose is to make sure our community is protected from excessive speeding and other traffic violations, such as improper parking, unauthorized commercial vehicle parking, and/or operation, etc., which can jeopardize the safety of our residents. Violators are ticketed by our security personnel, and on most occasions, a fine is levied to encourage violators to follow our village safety rules. The responsible parties for ticketed vehicles are offered a choice of paying the fine after notification by security or attending the monthly committee hearing. The committee is composed of 4 directors, 1 each from United, 3rd, 50, and GRF. Cited people are scheduled in from 9 a.m. in the morning until 12 noon and from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. That's by appointment only. At the hearing, each case is discussed and fines levied as appropriate. The committee provides leniency whenever possible and is determined by the majority vote after further discussion by the committee after the evidence part of the hearing is over. First-time offenders are offered a chance to partake in a 2-hour traffic school. Hearing results are in village only, and the results are not given to the DMV nor to insurance companies. The hearings are not open to the public. And when it's your turn, you can go in for the hearing, but after that, you have to leave. At the last meeting, 16 people were scheduled for hearing, of whom 2 didn't show up, resulting in the automatic determination of the fines proposed by security. Of the 14 who appeared, 11 were found to be responsible for the offenses and to deserve the fine. 1 had the offense and the fine waived, and 1 was found responsible for the offense but received no fine. 1 other person was referred. The reason I give these statistics every month is because it's to encourage people. I mean, you should come because maybe your particular circumstances will be sufficient to remove at least the penalty from your notice of violation. These 16 people that we're talking about received 26 violation notices amongst them. 5 people appealed to the committee by letter, which is another choice. Of those, 4 were determined to be responsible for the offenses and fined, and one was found responsible for the offense but had the fine waived. These 5 people received 13 violation notices. The next traffic hearing committee meeting will be on March the 20th, 2019. Thank you.
Thank you. Report from the Disaster Preparedness Task Force, Director Morrison. Surprise.
Isn't that cash?
Do you have a report? No, I guess nobody did a report this time. There was no meeting in February. And so the next meeting will be March 26th at 9:30 in the Cypress Room. All right, item number 16, our future agenda items.
Media and communications.
Did I miss that? I'm sorry.
Media and communications, okay. We met on the 26th of February. We are setting we have a subcommittee for a new policy on drones photography and filming in the village, since a lot of people are wanting to use drone views of our village for advertising on TV and such. We need to set up a policy for that, and so we have a committee set up to handle that and create a new policy. We also have, let's see, I already told about the 911 call for an ambulance if your elevator is out of your building. is out on your building and you need help getting somewhere, call them 9,900 of our 13,736 units in the village have internet. So we are moving ahead, slowly creeping into. we're falling behind again, but that's okay. The rates will be up. We will be negotiating for CBS, which raised its rate 75% this year, and we budgeted 10%, so that is quite a disaster for us. So we will expect a fee hike from GRF this year to cover that 75%. Thank you, CBS. Fox has also come up with some high numbers so far that are still in the ballpark. That will be up for negotiation. We are in a pool to try to negotiate these down. They are putting out, as you read, they are putting out lots of email notices from the village. Please read them all. Click on whenever there's some more information that you need to know, or just click on curiosity because you get to all kinds of things you didn't even know were there. So I suggest that you use that as a source of information for the village and continue to read the breeze. We are having an open enrollment for people who want to apply to be a docent on a docent tour, since we will have certain ones are retiring and certain ones we are deciding how many extra we want. But if you wish to be a docent and give a docent tour, please let us know at the committee or just notify anybody from GRF and we will hear it.
Becky Jackson.
Right, Becky Jackson, okay. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if your time permits, oops, are you done?
What? I was going to say we meet March 18th at 1:30. Thank you.
You had a comment.
Madam Chair, if time permits, I can give a short, brief intro of what happened last month on disaster preparedness. I do have recollection. You want?
Oh, all right. I asked you, and you said.
Okay.
All right. We'll have the report from the Disaster Preparedness Task Force.
Okay. Basically, we had a TV show, TV appearance talking about disaster preparedness, and through that, a lot of people did attend the diabetes series presentation for the first time on March 4th, and gave a lot of kudos to our Chief Moy for some of the awards he got last year from the community, being one of the best disaster preparedness program that even surpasses local cities by far. That's all I have to report. My next meeting is, as we know,
March 26th.
Yeah, March 26th at 9:30 in Cyprus.
Thank you. Future agenda items, we have two that were moved from this board meeting to a future board for vote, and that's the revised payment plan agreement and the guarantors agreement. The roles and responsibilities are still being worked on. I don't know that they'll be ready at the next meeting, but they're still on for a future agenda. We'll go to number 17, director's comments. And I'll start over here with Sue.
No comment.
Okay. Gary?
None.
Maggie?
Yes, we just passed a caregiver policy, so be aware that there will be younger people in the village. They should be wearing tags. They are.
We didn't pass it.
We didn't pass it?
No. We put it on next month. You came back for your agreement.
Never mind. All right, thanks. Okay, let's see. That's all.
All right. Carl?
I have nothing, thank you.
Director Armendariz?
I am appalled with the attitude that this board takes towards compliance with Civil Code 5500, 5501. At this point, the only thing I can recommend is that perhaps I should sit down with our legal counsel and our committee and point out where the information that's required by the Civil Code is not being provided on the information that's available on the computer in the director's room. Maybe that's what needs to be done, because if I can't convince you that we're not in compliance, and you've ratified this, and I don't see how you could have, then the only alternative I have is perhaps produce my information to the right authority, because we are not in compliance. Thank you.
I think that you should take the lead in this, and you go through everything, the 20,000 pages, and report to us.
That's not what I said.
All right, Director Ackercar.
After one member brought forward about the Handyman Program, I think we should add discussion for that in our future agenda items.
It's going to
Maybe
be
we
in
need
our
some
budget
training.
review. We gave it a year's time.
And
So that's, we don't want to,
I don't think we should do it right away.
okay.
Let's give it its year's.
Thank you.
they are
Test.
planning to add one more for this year.
We don't have budget for that right now.
So, yeah.
We'll discuss it. All right, Director Torn.
If our committee of financial review subcommittee or task force has difficulty going through all those records, I'll be more than happy to help out. If next time you have a meeting, please let me know. And I will be able to help out, show you how to do those analysis.
Access. We all have access. You just have to go in and do it.
Go in and do it.
Is the record in download in PDF format, or is it in Excel format? If it's PDF format, I cannot download it.
You can look at it at the
I can download
director's.
it. I can. That's why we have a problem, because we have to review one by one and write it down on spreadsheet in order to analyze it. We cannot download it and analyze it if it's only in PDF format. That's where your problem
Where
is.
does it say analyze in the law? Where does it say audit in the law? Excuse
How do you know it's not embezzled?
All right, enough.
And
Point
also,
of
okay,
order.
hold on.
Point
Hold on.
of order.
Well, anytime I ask
Point of
question, there's
order.
a point of order. And also, I would like to talk about roles and responsibilities. Okay.
Point of order. Oh, is it your turn? It's your turn, sorry.
Can I speak now?
Yes, you may.
VMS board. I'm having trouble understanding why some of the VMS board members stating that they are only responsible for staffings, not responsible staff. VMS board is VMS board. They need to be responsible for everything related to VMS. If they are not responsible for the processes, who should be responsible for? So that's the roles, responsibility totally mixed up. And we need to identify who should be. If VMS is not willing to take on that responsibility, are the mutuals and the GRF responsible for taking over that responsibility? We need to clarify that. And another question is, are VMS United employees or are VMS employees VMS employees? We need to identify that. If employees is under the jurisdiction of VMS board, they need to be responsible for everything they do. If United is responsible for everything they do, then they should be under United jurisdiction. So there's a question about who's responsible for what. This comes directly to accountability. Nobody's accounting for anything at this point. Nobody are allowed to look into say, why is this one not done? And VMS is supposed to lead that. And going back to the check register, I'm not saying anything that you two are doing the wrong thing. Please don't interpret that way. Okay, I want to make it clear. It's just you have to follow a certain procedure.
I think you've made your point.
Yeah, and do you understand that? The question is, will you follow
We don't
that?
agree, but we understand. All right, Director Addington, any comments? Thank you. Director Bastani?
Yes. I have to bring this up again because numerous residents have complained about Gate 2. I wasn't able to finish my comment as I asked for it, and I have been in construction management and construction for 38 years. For a scope like this they had to put it in 2 categories. One would be urgent work when the gate is closed, and one non-urgent, the work that can be done when the gate is not closed. They haven't done that. And that's why we have 6 weeks, which is a very long time. In my opinion, this could have been done in 2 days, not 6 weeks. Believe me, I'm talking from experience. And I agree with Carl, which says there is infrastructure work, but part of the infrastructure work is they can be done after the opening the gate. Is on the side. If you want to trench something, you do just a part which is within the gate. That is urgent part. The other part is not the urgent part.
Director Bastani, that is not a united issue.
I'm sorry?
That is not a united issue. It is a GRF issue.
Yeah, that's why I wanted
they
to talk
are
when
in
Mr.
charge
Parker
of the
was
gates,
here,
not us.
But I didn't get the chance.
Okay, well, there's nothing we can do.
Okay.
It's not us. Siobhan, did you have any comments? Jeff? No? All right. This meeting is recessed.